Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together.
Hello, everybody. Tonight, we are thrilled, and I say we because we're never really alone, right? We are thrilled. My chat and my listeners are absolutely thrilled to have tonight with us, duo Daemonology. May I present to you Mr. James Annitto and Mr. Carl L. Johnson. Welcome in, everybody. Let's get you in here. And
I can see you. Hello there.
Go. Whoops, wait a minute. Let's get it. There we are. Hello and welcome. Now. Let's get you a little bit bigger here. Now that's better. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming in tonight. My chat. Hello, everybody in here. Forgive me, chat, for not saying hi to everybody that pops up. Mods, if you would take care of that for me. We have wonderful mods here tonight. They're already dropping the links. Jackie, thank you. Take over Aunt Edna and Uncommon Belief and Laura. Welcome in, everybody, because tonight we want to give all our time to these gentlemen tonight. James, thank you so much for being here. Carl, thank you again. I hope it's all right for me to use your first names. Yes. Please take a little bit of time. I want to start off tonight. Like I said earlier to you guys, my chat's a real positive, high vibrational chat. They're extremely smart in a lot of these subjects. They're very interested in what you have to say tonight. I thought maybe we could start with the difference between a demonologist and an exorcist. Would you like to take that, James, or Carl, or whoever? Go ahead, James.
That's fine. So, a quick, easy saying of it that I've heard from priest friends of mine and fellow demonologists is that a demonologist is not an exorcist, but an exorcist can be a demonologist, and it's the best interpretation of it because yes, a demonologist can be a mediator. Maybe can be ordained, and it can be some form of spiritual mediator. But an exorcist is well-versed and fully trained in usually psychology. So most of them have had a master's or a PhD in psychology. And they've also, of course, been very well-versed in the sacraments and the sacramentals of the Catholic Church. And then very familiarized with counseling people. So, but the exorcist can employ the usage and study of demonology because it's the basis of theology, and there's those big differences. Like I would never say I was an exorcist, and I don't think Carl ever would as well. But you know, we do study demonology, but we don't necessarily perform like the expulsion ritual. We could assist, but we're not the main conduit of that ritual.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Carl? The difference to you between the two, is that pretty much covered, or do you have?
Oh, everything James said, I have said it that way. I couldn't have said it better, but I emphasize his point that an exorcist must be, by the very nature of the pursuit, must be a demonologist. But a demonologist is not necessarily an exorcist. I know quite a few demonologists now. I mean, it's still not a common vocation, but I do know demonologists. I don't know any that are exorcists. I know people who have assisted in exorcisms. But to be, by the Catholic Church definition, an exorcist, you know, that must be ordained, must have studied psychology. Well, God help us if they haven't studied some psychology and have some experience in that, and you know, the different maladies of the human mind, because it is often difficult to impossible to differentiate between psychological anomaly and abnormality and a spiritual assault, spiritual takeover. They can go hand in hand. There should be rules against that, but apparently there aren't. That mental illness can play into demonic possession. So yeah, that's you. To be an exorcist, yes, a demonologist, I think by anybody's definition, because you need to be versed, or an exorcist needs to be versed in demonic lore. And James and I define demonology as the systemized study of the lore and cultural traditions of wicked spirits. By the way, if a cough drop pops out of my mouth, it's nothing preternatural.
It's nothing. It's nothing being expelled from you at all. It's just a good old Luden's cough drop. It's
Sure,
wonderful.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Well, see, the thing is that you mentioned that. We could give some visual ideas. I'm just going to start right up from the front and say I've listened to a couple of your interviews, and I've listened to them of each of you separately. So I've got a little bit of background on that as far as what you think is, if like we picked a visual of a movie, say, one that we're all used to. I'm going to ask each of you if there's a movie out there that's complete BS. And one that might touch on more the reality that you've seen or that you know exists. Is there something like that that works for those questions there for visual?
Ooh, I think we both have answers for that. Who do you want to ask first?
Go ahead. Go ahead, James. You go first, because I have a funny feeling I know Carl's answer.
So the question is basically a bullshit movie and a movie that is a good interpretation?
Yes, please.
Um,
And we're real honest here.
I
do too.
I say I don't know if I'm going to steal. I think I know Carl's choice, so I
have nothing to say.
But I'd have to say the closest thing, but the most bullshit, and I think that like it changed the ideology of the Western culture is the Exorcist.
Mm-hmm.
Very kind of true to nature in some form, but of course a lot of theatrical nuance was added to that because of entertainment, and it really changed a lot of perspectives. So it's hard to call it bullshit, but in the same sense, it's like it is a horror pinnacle. It it's on T-shirts, it's memes. So I think in some form it has changed the nature of human perception on demons, and sometimes in a bad way. But that's if you think about it too, that's when the Ouija board or talking board phenomenon became evil as well. It really had dabblings in that things could happen. There's always dangers with dealing in the unknown, but that was the pinnacle when Reagan played with that board. It was no holds barred. People were like going against Parker Brothers at that time. I remember if I remember. I wasn't alive, but if I remember the articles that I've read and people I've heard stories, like it was big bloodshed. And so I would say that movie. And my two favorite movies, I'd have to say that are very similar, especially in the demonic realm or in the paranormal in itself. Of course, one is over the top. Both of them are kind of over the top because it's entertainment. I have to say Insidious.
Okay.
Because of the ability of astral projection and getting lost within that realm, which some people believe that to exist. And I think it's one of James Wan's finest films. Of course, connected to what Carl will talk about. And also, I'd have to say my favorite into the topic is The Rite with Anthony Hopkins. I think The Rite's a fantastic movie. I showed Carl that the first time, and I think he fell in love with that movie as well. But Carl, your turn, brother.
I would have been surprised if James did not include the Rite, because that is it's actually taken from documented transcripts of exorcisms. That strip there, so you can see what they really do and how they approach the subjects. It's not always like Reagan Teresa McNeil, where her face is terribly distorted and she's bound to the bed. Sometimes the client, the subject, will come to see the exorcist and then leave as if it's a psychiatric appointment. And that's illustrated in The Rite. But The Rite is a very profound film. Again, like many of these films, based on a true story. James, if expel my cough drop. Wait, I got to do that in style.
There you go.
What is that? It's a
Rebuke the cough drop.
Yeah.
Rebuke it.
Yeah, rebuke that cough drop. I hope it'll help. And James fully expected me to say the Conjuring. Conjuring 1, 2, and 3, and I will include them. Now, there is script in there. The rite of exorcism, the Ritualis Romano, is recited in that. So in that sense, it's accurate. But the way it was portrayed, no, it didn't happen that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have, and it brings up an interesting point because the character of Ed Warren, portrayed by Patrick Wilson, and respectively, Vera Farmiga portrays Lorraine Warren. Ed Warren comes in to save the day, and the priest doesn't show up on time. So Ed Warren has to perform the rite of exorcism himself, and counting on that his sincerity of purpose is going to make the exorcism legitimate, even though he's not an ordained minister. That, of course, it didn't happen that way. But it makes for like an interesting movie, because all hell breaks loose when he's performed that rite of exorcism. But it brings up a point. James and I think under duress, or in a certain, maybe not even under duress, but under special circumstances, I think we would be called to recite at least portions of the rite of exorcism. If we're in a corner, somebody has to do it, somebody has to say it. If it doesn't work, we're none the worse off. But it could help. And James and I have both participated in expulsions, where you drive out the spirit. You could call it a minor form of exorcism. But I have to rank as far as the most fascist and fictitious and inaccurate of these movies is something very obscure. James may not even be aware of it. It is The Exorcist 2, The Heretic. Man, they had a surefire formula for this movie succeeding. It was only several years after the release of The Exorcist. How could it fail? They brought in, Reagan Teresa McNeil. They brought in, what's the actress's name again? I'm losing my names here. Emily, what's her name? My brother met her. All that.
Oh,
Linda Blair. Linda Blair.
Yeah.
Linda Blair reprised her role as Reagan, and she's supposed to be like perhaps 3 years older. And they brought in Richard Burton, Shakespearean-trained movie star Richard Burton. How could it fail? It was abysmal. And while Richard Burton could be, stellar, of course, he was a movie star. In movies like The Robe and Night of the Iguana, I mean, of course, he was Richard Burton. But you cast Richard Burton in a film where he is totally miscast and trying so hard and overacting that it just did not float. That's what he was speaking like in the Exorcist. He was like this stupor, like the he tried too hard, and it just no subtlety to his performance, and it was cartoonish, but boring cartoonish.
You mean they don't crawl on the ceiling?
Well, I didn't say they never do, but
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah, but plus they had James Earl Jones as a young boy who was he was a young boy when he was possessed, and then Richard Burton seeks him out, and he says, "I understand you are demonically possessed." He said, "Yes, so they tell me," and he's become a doctor in the meantime. And they have Max von Sydow reprises his role as Lancaster Merrin, the Exorcist. So how could that fail? They brought back Max von, of course they show him when he's younger. Max von Sydow and his exorcism that they allude to in the movie The Exorcist. And they got James Earl Jones as the one-time possessed boy, Richard Burton as the priest, and Linda Blair. I mean, it couldn't fail, but lousy script can't be saved by good actors.
True.
Especially when they're not acting good.
So true.
I thought that was kind of bottom of the barrel, but if you want to laugh or something, just don't take it seriously.
And I've heard in the past that you both kind of liked the I don't know if it was the whole movie or certain aspects of it, but the Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Oh yes, now that is very accurate. They can't use the Annalise Michel. They can't use the names of the people that were directly involved. but it is the story, pretty much as it happened. The makeup effects, the special effects are what happened to her. You know? And a thing I like about that movie is they leave you not knowing if it was an element of the supernatural. Was she actually possessed by a demon? Was it her background, her mind? Was it her psychosis? And they leave you with a little nudge that it might have been something preternatural.
Something else.
I equate supernatural with impossible. So, but we like that very much. It'll leave you with not a very warm and rosy feeling.
Yes, correct.
That's also one of the things too, is that you can't also believe that everything you watch on YouTube or watch in, of course, media, but there are I've heard the actual recordings through a bishop that played in front of me, but there are some recordings of the audio of her speaking, and the strange voice that would occur through a vocal pattern as well, that could be listened to on YouTube. You just have to make sure you research and find out if that is actually, of course, the true documentation, the true audio. But like, even hearing that, just like it makes you kind of bone chilling, like to deal with that. Like,
I found that, I watch them all with a grain of salt too, and trying to learn about this, you really have to, if you're interested in it and you're interested in learning what happened to you, just experiences, whether it be a ghost or living in a haunted house or something. I think either experiences draw people to the paranormal to study it, and then we go off in different fields, or it's just, I believe, like you, James, you're just interested in the investigation part of it, correct? And so were you, Carl. Were you not both, early in life started out that way, investigating? I believe, Carl, you were with a twin brother and you started something, and then James, you were also in something early, and it just grew into this. You found your path, and I think that's...
James and I, we actually started, when I think about it, we began really investigating the paranormal and the darker side of that when we were the same age, the age of 15. Not the same year, though, but different years. But we were both 15 when we started delving into our interest there. James quite seriously at the time.
Interesting how people start so early.
Didn't call it demonology then. Didn't know that term. I don't think I didn't know that term back then. I didn't know that term until I met Ed Warren. Demonologist, demonology.
And just so people know, with the Conjuring and all three movies, Mike Chat knows how I feel about like Amityville. I keep saying that was such a miss. I was not very far from, I lived in New Jersey at the time, and I was not far from that. And, when I first got the book, I was excited, just like everybody else. I was like 15, 16, like, and I'm reading the book, and there were things that were happening in this book that I knew that probably could happen. I think the thing that bothered me the most was when the priest was going home and he was having an accident and cars were breaking down and he was getting warning to not go back. I know that's happened, similar things. But again, my chat, we've talked about it all the time. It doesn't necessarily have to be a demon. Not everything's a demon. Every time the floor creaks in some of these shows, it says demon, But, my chat is asking, a couple people have asked, I know Cassie did and somebody else. Sorry, guys, I'm just paying attention to what they're saying. If I miss it, I apologize. I'll go back if I can. But they're asking how... how much does this really happen? Is it rare? Real possession? Is it rare?
Yeah, I think
it's quite rare.
Yeah, I think I'm not very great with mathematics, but statistics are very easy to explain things, especially when it comes to percentages. And I think Carl and I have been doing this for 60 something plus years, and of course, Carl has the great chunk of that experience, 3/4 of it, basically. And, we've only come across 10 cases of what we would call demonic, 5 and 5 of each. Wow. And out of that 5 of my cases, 3 of those were possession. So that shows you how rare it really truly is. And of course, I think in the same essence, though, there are people that might have a different approach than Carl or I, where we look at things at a kind of a 360 perspective, very analytical. We kind of try to tackle the natural before we jump to, okay, there's Casper, there's a demon, or there's something that is bumping in the night that's not explainable before we jump. So we look at it in a different approach. There are people that might come across something that we've dealt with, and they jump to the conclusion it's demonic, and it's unfortunate because most of the time it's not. But yeah, for us, it's rare. And
you think it's rare too, Carl, as far, because he said 5 cases. Are you feeling that too? It's certainly not as prevalent as I think people are making it out to be at this time.
It might be more prevalent than we know because it's not always a dramatic emergence of the demonic spirit. Sometimes it's more subtle. It could be a change of mood, and the demon just doesn't really, for lack of a better term, doesn't take full hold of the person or is subdued. So perhaps we have run into more cases. But as far as overt, sort of more dramatic situations, 5 and 5 it holds that. So not very common considering the volume of cases that have been brought to our attention. We
And
try to nip them before that gets too extreme.
What do you think about now that, like, I was talking to James in the beginning before you got here, a little bit off to the side, and we were talking about going to different things like Gettysburg Bash and the Paranormal Expos and things like that. And then you go into these seminars, which you both have been a big part of. I know you do lectures together and separately. And if you go into a large panel, I've found that some people that say that they're demonologists or exorcist or whatever, and they'll have a panel, and someone else will be there and they'll go, well, I've never seen anything like that, so I don't think that exists. I've never seen, and I know why some people do it. I believe I know why some people do it. Some people just stay in the high vibrational, like what we call like the high angel frequency, and they don't even want to acknowledge that, and I get that. But to say on a panel that, this has never happened, or it's usually mental illness, and I believe in some cases it can be. If you've ever seen an epileptic fit, that can look like, a possession of some sort. And I can imagine a lot of people back in the day were probably, for witchcraft or something because of an epileptic fit or an illness of some kind. And that's why I thought, for nothing else of the value of Exorcist, but what the child went through, what the parent went through, trying to go through doctors and tests and MRIs and everything, trying to figure out what was wrong with this child. It just seems like it's another way of breaking down the family dynamic and, these people, because of what you have to go through to get to that point where, okay, this is it, we've got a possession. So I can imagine what James just said too, is you have to go through all the natural first. You have to unravel the basket of yarn that's all tangled and knotted and try to figure out what's going on here. It's not easy, and I don't think it can be done in 60 minutes.
No, it's so much to talk about. It's kind of like you have to tell a story to tell the story. You have to qualify it. Oh, well, this is why I was there at the site in the first place. And of course, we can respect someone who takes that stance, like, oh, I don't want to deal with the negativity. I acknowledge that it exists. Or someone that says, well, I haven't seen it. That's why I don't believe. I haven't seen it yet. But someone who just says, no, there can't be anything to it. It's all mental illness. It's like, that's too narrow a view, really. And it's a comforting one if one can embrace it. If one believes it's all mental illness, fine. We don't have to be bothered with the boogeyman, the spirits. But they do tend to be real, sometimes in disturbing ways.
Well, gosh, yeah. I mean, to me, if you believe in the ultimate good, you got to believe that the ultimate bad would exist too. The absence of all that love, the absence of the goodness and everything in between, I certainly believe that a lot of cases in houses and things like that, of course, now, over the past 10, 15 years, like I said, every time a board creaks or something comes over, this white noise, it's a demon. No, it didn't. We have to get out of the Hollywood production of things. Now, Carl's been on several shows. Carl has been, on Ghost Adventures. You've been on, I believe, The Haunted on Animal Planet, I believe, and some other ones too. So you know a little bit about the background of, producers adding things and editing in things and putting in the dramatics. Like someone is standing there brushing their teeth, and on this narration that they're giving, and they're telling their story. They're saying, and I felt like somebody was watching me, and there's this demon behind with horns and all this stuff. He never said that. That was put in there for effect. That gets me.
That's a pretty scary thing, I think. I mean, I've gotten over it. I don't dread it anymore. But I used to wonder, like, when I closed the mirror, the mirror panel is. I'm going to see something in the back.
Oh, yeah.
They do that very effectively in some films, including American Werewolf in London.
Oh, gosh. I love that film.
Jack,
That was a great film. And the way they came and he was decomposing slowly along, trying to tell him. That was awesome. Well done.
One step at a time. He was more and more decomposed. Yeah.
And he was trying to get him to kill himself because you don't want to be this guy.
You got to kill yourself. That's the only way the curse is going to end. You have to take your own life. Otherwise, you're just going to go on and kill it.
So true. Yeah. There have been a lot of good movies.
Jack,
Yeah. So if there was one case that, either you guys did together or separately that taught you the most about this or changed your perception of things or strengthened your perception of things, what case would that be for you, James?
So I'd have to jump to 2 points. I have to say a case and a situation. The first situation is, I served in the military for a short period of time, then I was medically discharged, but within the basic training phase, I was agnostic. I'd be honest, I was not a believer of God. I thought it could be a possibility. I think any possible equation that's not answered yet is a possibility, Nobody has disproven God. Nobody has disproven belief or faith. Faith is an integral part of the human brain structure. But I was agnostic. I didn't know what to take. And I was at church one time. I used to go to church every Sunday to escape cleaning the barracks for quite a few hours. Try to tuck away from the drill sergeants peeking at you. They're gonna come up and slap you while you're in the pews. And so I went to Church of Christ after probably like the 13th or 14th time. I don't even know how many times I went to Temple. I went to Gospel Church.
Me too.
Everything that you can name, every belief that you could, that's probably interpreted within the Bible. I mean, not in the Bible, within people's belief systems and in the military. So I went to Church of Christ, and I was, of course, nodding, and they asked who would like to be baptized that day. And I'm not the person to say, I'll get baptized today. But I shot my arm up, and I got baptized that day. And that day was like a 180 perspective of my belief system. I believe, I felt like this thing overcome me to shoot my arm up and get baptized. It was very powerful for me. And I would say the case that really took the pinnacle of it, because I believed that was me understanding good existed, that this was a message, this was maybe for something to take on. And when I got medically discharged from the military, I got severely depressed because this was my life goal. I wanted to serve the military as my grandfather did, who was a lieutenant colonel. And of course, my grandmother was one of the first female officers in the Navy. So I felt like I was very depressed. I felt like I failed them, and then I got involved in, helping people do ministry work. So it was, I think, a godsend to me. And I got involved with the Church of Christ as a pastoral assistant. So, and then I was eventually ordained and, started doing deliverance ministry work for them. And I think what the case that really took the pinnacle of it was Salem, Massachusetts, where I was called in by a psychologist. And I talk about this case frequently because it is a true pendulum swing for me, where it made me believe in evil. I now believed in good, and this was the full realization evil existed. This case from start to finish was, hectic, and it really ruined my personal relationships too, as well. It didn't just affect the individuals involved, but it affected in some form relationships for long periods of time. But I think experiencing what I experienced that night made me realize demons did exist. And I actually truly did not believe in demons at that point. Yes, I did believe in God, but you start slowly. So I had never experienced it. I was see it to believe it kind of guy, and that I really did see it that night. I really saw something that I don't believe could be interpreted humanly through any medical issue, psychosis issue. I think what I saw that night was genuine, and that was the case that really changed me and made me realize evil existed.
Powerful. Thank you for your service, by the way. I was in the army and know exactly how you feel.
Army 288 Mike, baby.
There you go. There you go. Missiles and munitions. I was a truck driver. Loved it. Absolutely loved
That's
it.
what I was. Truck driver too.
Were you? Yeah. Nice. But that was the thing. When you get out, you do have that kind of thing. Like, man, I thought I was going to do this forever. Now what? And you do come with that, like, a little downer there. And I get it, because my sister was Navy, my daddy was Army. Same deal, And then you find your path. I believe everybody's got a journey. We all go through something to get us to that point. Because say if you did exactly what you just said that changed you 5 years earlier, it wouldn't have had the same impact. So, I think that has a lot of credence to it. We're all on this journey, and sometimes we don't get stuff till we're ready for it. How about you, Carl? What was that case for you?
Pivotal case, pivotal moment.
Yeah.
It was actually two, and how they blended, because they were both cases of full-blown demonic possession, although they occurred many years apart. And the first one was in I believe it was 1980. I was just out of my teens, and I took a more direct approach to that. Although I did explore, even at that time, I tried to explore the psychological aspect. But other people who were involved did not care about what was going on in the subject's mind. They just do invasive spirit, because they were from that culture. And then I had a similar case some years later. It was actually 11 years ago this week, and could have been 11 years ago tonight, for all I know. And that was demonic possession. And yet I took a different perspective on it. The same kind of things were happening. However, I was looking at it more from a clinical standpoint. What brought this on? What was the trauma that incited this? What started it? How did it get to this point with this young woman? The first was a young man, then a young woman. And yet they had similar symptoms, but I was looking at it a little differently. And during it was during that case, as we were addressing it, and we did perform an expulsion. I actually directed that expulsion. And it was during the situation that the subject, the young woman, revealed the source of her trauma, just spontaneously, and her family didn't know about it, that she had been sexually molested. And the way it happened. Oh, their house was haunted. Yeah, they had stuff going on, and they had that since the brother and sister were children. But it all blended together, and so this woman, just during the course of trying to rid the spirit, banish it, she came out with what had happened to her. It's like it would have been suppressed, and then I think she suppressed it in her own mind, and then it just burst forth. So it was therapeutic, and it was helpful. I was something of a catalyst for that, yes, but it needed to come out. It needed to be spoken in front of her family. So I'm just glad I was a part of that. I might have expedited that revelation.
Outstanding.
Yeah, so I took a little different. So you take those two, and I was thinking during the latter exorcism, or the latter demonic expulsion, I should say, because it was never fully an exorcism. I was thinking, now I have a chance to do it differently. Now I can look at a different perspective. Now I can see it as a thing of the mind that is resulting in paranormal manifestation. It's not so much the demon is causing this. The demon is the symptom. The demon is the result. The demon has been brought in because of her trauma, made her vulnerable. As I said, there should be sanctions and rules against that.
Yes.
On the metaphysical level, but apparently there are not. Not always.
If you guys ever get this rule book, I want a copy because I don't understand. I've tried to explain that to chat, and I'm so glad you brought that up because I said one of the heartbreaking things is I've done a lot of work with young rape victims and a lot of work with, vets and PTSD and things like this. And I've tried to explain as best I can the sad part of that. I mean, can you imagine being a small child that is being abused by someone, a family member, whatever, and it just seems like it's almost an invitation because of that trauma, because of that negativity, because of that energy going on, that it opens up for something like that to come in. And that just doesn't seem fair, does it?
No, it makes the subject more vulnerable. No, it's not fair. A demonic entity, they're not omniscient. They're not omnipresent. They're not all powerful. In fact, I think the demons are overrated. But they shouldn't have license to manifest in a way that is harmful for a child of 4 or 5 years old. They shouldn't be able to invade a young mind like that, torment them, mislead them. But a child should not have mental illness. A child should not be molested. A child should not have cerebral palsy. These things happen, and it's not so much that the demons are, constrained. They just are, and they react demonically. They're. I'd like to think that there's the angels would arrest them and stop their their aggression, but they are a force of nature, and they come out and they can harass. They have limits, they have limitations, but they can do damage that they should not be allowed to do, and it just has happened in our experience.
You feel the same way, James?
Yeah, I also think too. In essence, I think going to the God route, people ask why are demons allowed to kind of molest and meddle in human lives, and I think there is an essence of, and of course, I think this is in some sense a metaphoric thing as well, is that if humans are even children, which is terrible to even think about, but less children of that age are affected more at the adolescent age of 11, 12, 14, 13, 15, 16, early adulthood, where they could have the remnants of the trauma that's apparent. Usually, like Carl said, every time it has been a demon involved, there is trauma. But yeah, I definitely think it's really dependent on the circumstance and the individual. But yeah, I definitely agree on the trauma thing, very much so. But as far as the demon itself, what it is, it could emulate from the individual. It could be fallen. It could be many different things that we really truly don't know. I think the one thing that we can kind of pinpoint on it is that it is non-corporeal. It's never been physical. So that could lead to many different interpretations and why it meddles and involves the human race. But, I think it's the temptation as well, with the God route, the temptation. And if we can be tempted away from God, then we should be punished, right? Because we have been given life, and life is very beautiful. I know some people might have a different interpretation and think it's not beautiful. They hate it very much so, miserably, but it is very beautiful. The nature is beautiful. Like, you can live a positive, good life if you allow it to happen and you do it. And I think that the demons can be a form of temptation, and usually it is. It meddles with the trauma, and then there's an invitation, either subconsciously, consciously, or it becomes obsession, and they want it a part of their life. And there's many routes, and that's why, of course, when Carl and I deal with it, we don't love it, and because there's just so many different. It's like a maze. It's like a corn maze. You can go so many different paths, and that might not be the exit. And you're at a roadblock, and you have to keep looking for that exit. And sometimes we never find that conclusion. And sometimes there's never an answer, or there's never help for that individual. And that's unfortunately like anything in life. Sometimes there's never good routes, never good doors that you open.
And I think sometimes too, I've heard from others. I mean, I have a friend who he doesn't call himself, demonologist or an exorcist or anything like that. He's more of a psychic medium that likes to help. And I can call him up and not even use names and say, I have a certain individual. He has a problem in his house, and just be real quiet. And he knows exactly who I'm talking about. He'll pull on that, and just talk about it. And he said something to me one night I'll never forget. He said, I can try to help, but it's going to come right back. He's addicted to it. He likes it. He likes the attention. He likes writing the books. He likes talking about it. He's going to keep bringing it back. I don't know if that ever happens to you guys where someone just goes back and repeats the behavior again or something like that. How easily is that to happen? If we are talking about actual world of demons and not a negative ghost that used to be human that's messing with someone.
Well, we've seen it on different levels. I like what James said about the invitation. Mm-hmm. That invitation may be some kind of magical act, where a spirit is called in through some divination device, or it could be just someone shouting out, I give up on life. I have no faith. I've had it. It could be that going through a time of turmoil and weakness. But as far as that addiction goes, one very extreme case, and there are, of course, most of them aren't so extreme, was that James will remember his name. I almost can. It was a subject that Ed and Lorraine Warren were dealing with, that man who was taken over in very dramatic fashion. What Maurice? All you had to do was move your lips that way. I knew it was Maurice. Yeah. And Maurice was successfully exorcised, but then wasn't successful because it came back. This presence was so embedded in his mind, he couldn't conceive of being rid of it. And perhaps he was getting a certain satisfaction of it because he did have delirium and mental illness, and that's how it manifested. That was his validation, in a sense. Like, I matter. People are paying attention to me. This thing thinks I'm worthy of taking over, and persons are coming to help me. There am I worthy. So, but it sprang from mental illness. He could not shake that, and that was his addiction. And it ended quite tragically. Although ostensibly he had been exorcised and was all right for a little while.
And that's awful. I think when it happens to adults, it's almost not as it's always tragic, but it's when it's the kids, it's just not fair. Like we said earlier, any trauma or something like that, or mental illness. Now I've seen it happen to adults with human. I call ghosts that are earthbound never left ghosts, and then spirits, sometimes that crossed over. That's just how I say. But to me, I was bartender, and we had several ghosts in this bar. Some, that made themselves known, and this one that seemed to learn a little trick. I call him a jumper, and you could see him. It was a him. You could see a mist. Sometimes it was a gray mist. Sometimes it was a little darker. I can't explain that. But his habit was the same. And when the bar was full, you could see this kind of a mist come up behind people. And you'd see little things start to happen. Like you could tell a woman would get slapped or pinched, and she'd turn and smack the guy next to him, and it would move over here, and it would do the next thing. So you could tell it was messing with people. But you could see it also kind of push, and then go to the next, and then it would disappear, and that person would change. And I know it sounds very odd, but I always knew when it was this person, because somebody was drinking a beer or whatever, all of a sudden everything would change about this personality. Not really facial, but the way they held their face, the way they spoke would be a little different. It was only moments, but enough to order a shot of tequila, no salt. Never seen anything like it. And, they would always roll up their sleeves if they had long sleeves, and then it would go. And you might not see anything for a couple of weeks, and then it would come back and do it again. Nobody ever believed me. I'm like, watch, there it goes, right down the bar. You could see it, And I've heard other people say that, too, that much more gifts than I do as far as going in and actually rescuing or clearing places or trying to, deal with a haunted house. I don't know if you've ever seen anything like that, where human, spirits or ghosts who were once human can jump into or influence the living. Have you ever?
I've seen things like that. I wasn't sure how genuine it was, but I
Mhm.
know the person wasn't making it up.
Mhm.
And I just don't know if it was actually a spirit doing that.
Mhm.
But I have seen that where
Mhm.
somebody wants to suddenly take on another presence and personality, be doing things like habits that aren't their own.
Mhm.
Mm.
Mm. Have you, James?
Yes, I for sure have.
James has dated that, in
The
fact.
way your face lights up, I think
Yeah.
he's like he has all these like secrets in it,
Yes.
chat in his back, and he's like not giving them up. Tell us.
No, it's just one of my most prolific things that ever occurred to me. Like, it's still mind blowing to me to this day. I still always want to doubt it, but how I lived it and how others lived through it, and
Mhm.
I just no, I have like. I think it's in any essence is a possibility. Just to say, I won't tell my story because it would be too much to explain. I have limited time tonight,
Mhm.
so but I will say it is definitely possible. I think
Mhm.
it's frequent. You look at where Christianity, the largest religion, comes from Judaism. They believe in the Divik, which is the lost soul that could possess because of a negative intention, because it died for negative cause. The Divik would then possess an individual. The Hindus have the same belief system. Shintoism, Christians do. With lost souls. You see it in movies like The Lucky Bone, with the
Mhm.
girl dying and trying to tell a story. So I think there's many different interpretations of it. But yeah, my experience. One day, maybe when we come back on, I will tell my experience.
Well, you have an open invitation on this show, honey.
Okay.
Both of you do. So,
you.
also, before I forget, I would very much like to see if I can get this picture here of the cover. Chad, if you could, mods, please share the link. I know you shared there it is right there. They're already doing it. I have Black Ops mods here. They're fantastic. But the Book of Carl, let's see here if I can pull it up. I had
Great
at least
book.
Yeah, the Book of Carl. I think.
here it is, the
The
Book of
book of
Carl.
Carl.
There it
Yeah,
is.
Carl.
There
we
it
go.
is right there. Shadow Realms Demonology Handbook. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yes, I sold a few copies of that over the weekend, just yesterday.
Outstanding.
That
Maybe-
is, as the title says, it is a handbook that somebody can refer to while they're on a case, or like they're working on it. Like, well, let's see what this guy Carl did. Let's look at some of his cases. It is a compilation of essays, personal reflections, theory,
Mhm.
and illustrations and photographs. It was written with my co-author Lana Jan Brock, who's an accredited theologian, and I was going to have her do a nifty introduction to it. Why don't you write the introduction, Lana? And so she started writing a few essays, and she ended up writing half the book.
Mm.
It's precisely 300 pages. I think it's an easy read, actually, but and I had to put some humor into it because it's me, and so it's got some light stuff in it. One chapter is Beware Those Dolls.
Mm.
Because quite a few people find dolls spooky. They look like little humans. You wonder if their eyes are going to move or they're going to blink. And sometimes they do. So, and mannequins can be freaky too. If you're in a department store at closing time, if you work there or something, mannequins they keep looking at you.
It's kind of creepy, yeah.
Yeah, there's creepy aspects to them. And it talks about that case of demonic possession. I don't go into too much detail in the book about that. The one I was alluding to, that first one I had.
The one with the glove? The young
Yeah.
boy that found the glove?
Did you read the book? Bless your heart. Yes, that's the young boy. It all started, his travail started when he was in a cemetery in the west end of Providence and found a woman's glove, picked it up and brought it home with him. Now, he was influenced because his godmother was Santorian.
Ah.
And she said, you must bring that back or the spirit will follow you. Wrong thing to say to a young boy like that. So he brought it. Well, he went to bring it back, but it had disappeared. Now, in that culture, they embrace a belief in spiritual intervention, spiritual disruption. So that was part of it, too. That's how I addressed that later case with more of a psychological overview. So, yeah, that's talked about in the book, the possession of Lucas. I call him Lucas because that was his name. Why not? but it was a long time ago.
Bless that little boy. I mean, he went through a lot.
He did. Oh, yes, he went through a lot, and it was educational for me as well. And apparently, he was not scarred by it. I don't know. I haven't been in touch with him in any recent years, but I asked him a few years later. I still knew him. I said, and I had forgotten about that incident. And I thought about it one day, because life just goes on. I said, Lucas, do you remember, 3.5 years ago, you were going through, and you've been going through it for a couple of years before. Something was taking over you, and you were exhibiting a different personality. You were going through something. It looked like you were possessed. Now, I remember a little bit about it, but not much. It doesn't bother me. Okay, good, success.
Excellent.
So I thought he'd be traumatized by that experience, but fortunately, it was arrested in time, and he was not traumatized long term by it.
How amazing!
I wish I had James there with me, because I can tell James about it and I can write about it. But you had to be there to see these things. What a good addition it would have been to have James Annitto there. And we're both learning as we go along. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, if I see that little boy, man, coming at me like a ladle, bro, I don't know if I'd be like shooting a hockey puck at him. I'd be like, get out of here, dude!
It's hard to imagine. It's so hard to imagine, and I try to tell people from what I know, and I know, a sliver of information in a, grandiose universe of information. I know very little, and most of that's guesses and theories and thoughts, and you see something else that totally flips that and changes your mind. I mean, that's just this subject. But, there are some solids, people suffer, whether it's, in their own imagination or whatever. But, I mean, I've had things happen to me. People look at people like us that are in this all the time. They go, how did you not know? And I'm like, because it's so subtle. It's so slow. It's, a slow build of, stuff. I mean, I actually, fast story, my husband brought home a World War II rifle. And I promise you, just being an empath, that's just a normal intuition, everyday ability. You just have a little sense, you're sensitive. I could feel something was coming. And I couldn't figure out what it was. My husband pulls up in the driveway. He's all excited, he's all excited. By the time he opened the door, I had sage and the holy water. What are you doing? Because it was literally, you've either been with somebody or something was different. The energy was strong. And, I saged it, whatever. He put it under the bed, then put it into the safe. And before you know it, things started happening. The cats that used to go under the bed didn't go under the bed. One of the cats became sick. You bring him to the vet. They can't tell what's going on. You bring them back. I mean, it's this and this and this. Eventually, the cat passed. Then the other one started getting sick. And I felt so stupid because I couldn't pinpoint what was going on. Now I can look back and I can see a pattern. And I mean, I just went ballistic, opened all the windows. I mean, I got the sage, the holy water, Archangel Michael. Let's go, Mike. We got, let's clean the house. Let's go, just vacuum it out, get everything out. And I mean, I spent hours just going through the house, doing the spiritual warfare prayers and reading the Bible and the scriptures and just pounding it and just being adamant about it. And it was gone. Like that, I can't tell you what it was. I don't know if it was a buildup of the energy of the people that it had killed, or the person that had it, or who knows. I don't know anything about attachments to objects, but I know antique stores have ghosts, and things like that. So I mean, I don't know, but again, a subtle thing.
Stone tape theory, I think that's called, right? Stone tape theory.
That kind of attaches to things, I believe. I mean, that's kind of how it is, isn't it? Before you know it, because they always say to people, why did you stay in that house? Why did you stay so long? Why did it take you so long? I think it's because it's very subtle at first. Little things, movement changing, or, people have see an apparition, or the children see an apparition in the home, and it's gaining trust.
Well, I think with the rifle, it could have been excitement. Somebody was excited to actually have this object. It's kind of like I use the analogy that if I have a 5-year-old, well, soon to be 5-year-old in 2 weeks, that if I put a battery in one of his toys, the doll becomes animatronic. It talks, it moves. Okay. It voices its opinion if you ask it a question, some of them, right? If you take the battery out, it's no longer moving. Oh, of course, unless something preternatural happened, of course. But the doll won't move, won't talk, and won't answer a question. So yeah, maybe the rifle, there was excitement to it. The battery was there because now it's somebody that cares about this object. It's not just a locale. And that was enough of it to kind of create energized it, and there you go. Maybe it could replicate something, but you guys stood your ground. You put your statements down, and you didn't linger with it, and you were able to dissipate it. And I think that's with any kind of object. I think Charles Dickens wrote about it in the pamphlet Haunted Houses. That where the person that goes in the location is the battery to that location. And Charles Dickens wrote that in 1890. Well, the Ghost Club, if not earlier, like 1880, something like that.
A little earlier, yeah.
A little earlier, yeah, but that, yeah.
1880s.
Dickens was fantastic on ghosts. I mean, Christmas Carol alone, the Pickwick Papers
Yeah,
and things
what
like
a superb ghost story. And he has that magnificent element in it where he doesn't say it's ghosts. Ebenezer Scrooge's protagonist believes it's ghosts, but the reader, maybe not. Was it a vivid dream? Yeah.
It was a good spiritual book, but it was also a good enough book to change the way that we celebrate Christmas today.
Absolutely. And anybody, he's my absolute favorite writer. I mean, my cat's named after him. So there you go, Charles. You're welcome. And, but he is, because he was also a whistleblower. He tried to do a lot for the poor and the orphanages and things like that, and the prisons, and bring it all to light. So, James, I'm looking at the clock. You said an hour. I know you got stuff to do. So if you want to get to anything you want to tell us, I don't know if you want to stay or you have to go. I promised you an hour. Carl, if you want to stay and tell us about The Conjuring, I'm going to tell you right now, chat. The Conjuring, I don't think would have happened if it wasn't for Carl and his brother and his team. So he's got a great story about that. But again, I say that not to cause antagonistic things. It's just we tell the truth. We tell the truth here. And, again, they brought up dolls. Annabelle, it's, there's enough scary things in the world, and there's enough, real things, like I say with Amityville, I think that whole thing was just, but at the same time, not far away was the Searles from The Haunted, and I think that one very well may have been a case, if that was true, The Haunted with the Searles, and I think the Warrens were involved in that one as well. I'm not 100% sure, but James, how do you feel about, you want to stay? Would you like to tell a story? What would you like to leave this chat with tonight? They're thrilled to have you all, by the way, absolutely thrilled.
Well, I'm fine with answering one more question, but of course, I know Carl will probably expound upon this as well. But if for people that want to get in touch with us, either for a case or for information, or to see where we will lecture or have an investigation next, because we do public investigations for people that do want to learn from Carl or I or the other individuals. We all learn from each other. You can go to demonology.org. You're fantastic moderators, doing a great job on that. But yeah, demonology.org. You can reach out to me, James Annitto, either Facebook or Instagram. Please reach out. Any questions that weren't answered tonight, I'll do my best to answer them for you. But yeah, no, I'll answer one more question, and then I'll go like Grease 2, right into the sunset.
Well, I gotta say, before I give you this question, Carol has an excellent question. But I want to say that I'm so pleased I got to talk to you tonight, James. James and I have spent a few elevator rides together in complete science, and I just didn't want to bother him. He was so tired. When you do, a good 6-8 hours of an expo and you're answering questions, I just didn't want to bother him. I knew I was going to ask him eventually on the show and be able to talk to him straight up. So it's been a pleasure to meet you, James, and you as well, Carl. I never got to meet Carl in person, but it's lovely to have you on tonight, sir. Carol would like to know, yes, I will, Carol. I have always believed that those who study evil is studied by evil. Do you believe that too?
Oh, yeah, I do. In a nutshell, I have to believe that. Ed Warren said, and he did come up with some pearls of wisdom. Ed Warren said, once you are recognized by the demonic realm, you are forever marked. They will always know you. They'll always seek to undermine you. So I think so. I think that you have to have a thorough understanding of what is evil and evil personified to explore it, to be effective in that exploration. So yeah, you get to you're on their wanted list or their not wanted list. You know, the entities. But sure, yeah, you become known. I don't know why when I go into a case, sometimes things start to happen a little different. Like in two situations, my chair with me in it was propelled back against, across the floor against the wall, the back of the room. And sometimes Ouija boards will stop working if somebody was doing the Ouija board play, like Wiccans or whatever. They stop working when I come in the room. I don't know why that is, because I don't mind Ouija boards, spirit boards. And yeah, it seems like something. And that house in Harrisville, Harrisville, Rhode Island, on Round Top Road, Round Top Farmhouse. They call it the Conjuring House now. They tell me, the homeowners tell me that I stir up the dust, that things tend to happen, the bangs and the knocks on the walls, the scurrying footsteps tend to happen after I've been there. So
You're the
that's
battery
quite
in the toy.
Yeah, I
You're
am.
the battery.
And anybody said enough toys around with batteries and a little, fixed with batteries. You take out the battery, sometimes it runs a little bit more, like it's got that charge in it still. So, sometimes it'll kind of turn back on, even though the battery's out of it, but it won't stay on for very long without the power source. So I think that's what I do sometimes. I leave that little jolt there.
There you go.
I'm
Do you
pretty
think
sure
so, James?
I'm pretty sure we've been both called tools in our life.
You guys are tools. That's what
Yeah,
you
man. Well, what do you think about that evil studying you? I mean, you have to be careful if you. Who said that? Was it Nietzsche that said that you have to be careful if you're gonna hunt monsters, that sometimes they hunt you back?
True. But I also like Sun
Should be
Tzu, where he
Nietzsche.
says needs to know your enemy, so you can
Yes.
correlate that and reflective as well. That if you start meddling, I think that it's not necessarily the study that is the perception of evil to study you. I think it's when you start applying, like Carl and I do, that study into the field work and trying to dabble into their menacing capabilities. And I think when you start dabbling in that, of course, that's when they will start lurking and trying to understand their enemy, because they want to know what they can do to affect you. Like we talk about the individuals that are being afflicted and their traumas. You think if somebody's going to come in and try to be the mediator and try to sway this negativity to positivity, they're going to not know your traumas, not know your weaknesses. If you're going to have kind of a crack in your faith, if they come at you a certain way, will it demoralize you? Will it detract you from going? So yes, I definitely think it's a possibility. I think it's stupid not to think that if you make your enemy, that we can see this in the human sense. Yeah, many people, your worst enemy, your worst detractors know more about you than yourself sometimes. They try to get every little dirty detail on you because that's what they want to throw on you. They want to throw dust and cloud on you. So the demonic are no different if it truly does exist. And of course, I do think it does. And I think they are the master manipulators that I like to call them. So yes, so definitely. I think it's more the application of the study, not just the study.
Absolutely. And it's absolutely fascinating. I don't think one show can do it. James, will you come back?
Of course, I definitely would love to. Of course, with Carl as well, because there's nothing better than having the duo.
Right.
Yeah.
And and next time I promise we'll have put aside as much time as you want to spend, because this chat here is just begging for more time, and to have you guys back. They think you're wonderful, and let's do this. And you guys let's give an idea. I don't know if you want to tell where you are. I mean, if that's okay, what state, so they know?
I'm from Cranston, Rhode Island, and the reason I cannot be on much longer, of course, I have school break, but I go to school for psychology right now.
Wonderful.
But so I'm from Cranston, Rhode Island, so if you're in the New England area, please, I would love to get a cup of coffee with you. If you have a cage in your basement, I will not come visit it.
Yeah, no trapping my guests. Absolutely not allowed. Not allowed. You call this chat, we'll come and rescue you.
They say there's a market for that. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I got a pretty powerful chat here. These guys love you, and they're wonderful, positive
Thank you.
people. And there's a couple things in here where they're saying, they've been wronged by religion. Again, guys, religion, I'm just going to say what I normally say. I never let the mouth of religion speak for the heart of my father. Religion's got a lot of bad things, but, I believe you, James, you are connected to the old Catholic Church. It's a little bit different, is it not, than the...
Formally, so yes, I still have connections to the Catholic Church because I do feel like
Right.
the Christian sense they do have the leading way of charge of dealing with the exorcism ritual. They're a little bit more structured, which is, I think, never a bad thing. But yes, I was ordained as a deacon for the Old Catholic Church, and really just the huge difference is that we disconnected the Council of Nicene, and that form is because of papal infallibility. We believe and respect that he is the Bishop of Rome, but we don't believe that he is the final say or the only person that God talks to. So that's the key difference. We follow the same sacraments, the same apostolic succession. We're the Catholic Church, which means universal church, right? We should be universal. But yes, I'm Old Catholic. But that's what I'm ordained in. I'm very eclectic. I'm a very eclectic Christian, very open-ended. I've studied multiple religions, but I do have a lot of Christian study and have been ordained in 2 different churches.
I think that's where a lot of us are at this time. I mean, I think we have done that. Like you said, you were going a little bit of temple, you went to this, you went to that. I tried everything because I wanted to get it all. Like, where did I feel like I fit?
Yep.
Because I'm also Native American, right? And I'm also Native American, so very nature-based. But gosh, there's so much out there. Personally, I believe that a lot of stuff has been, let's just say, for the lack of another term, evil has used religion to turn people against God and make them think that there is no good out there. But you really have to take it individually. You have to find your right path and what's in your heart, because we all have that divine spark. We all have that connection to our source, and our light is what gets us through the darkness. So don't turn your back on the light because you've seen dark. Turn to the light, even if it's, if you have to keep looking to find your spot, it's there, I promise you. And tonight we've had 2 very bright lights in this, what can be very dark world, and they're telling you that it's possible to see the light and to come out of that darkness, and they brought a lot of people out of that. And again, James, I know you have to go, so if you want to pop out, they're putting everything in here so they can get in touch with you, and I will get in touch with you again. We'll schedule another show and have you back on. Good luck on your test, love.
Thank you, Sysco.
You're
Carl,
welcome.
good night, my brother.
I will.
Thank you, love. Carl, I'm so glad you could spend a few moments with you. As much time as you like, sweetie. I would love for the chat to hear a little bit, if you don't mind. In 1973, I believe that you and your brother and possibly your team, I don't know if it was just the 2 of you, but you guys were one of the first ones at the Conjuring house, the farmhouse. And I wanted to give you a chance to tell a little bit about that, because I don't think the whole thing would have happened if you guys hadn't gotten involved first.
Oh, I thought you might want to ask me a little bit about that before we say goodnight. Yeah.
I do, because I really love to tell people, look, if you're going to watch a movie, use discernment. I think, like I said earlier, that, at the same time, and I don't know if you know about the Searles. I've spoke to a couple of the
I've only heard
girls.
the name. I don't recall the story.
Yeah, it was a movie called The Haunted. The book was also called The Haunted. The Warrens, who were, I think, very busy in the 70s, 80s, with their lectures and college lectures and things. And still, to this day, we're hearing things back and forth. Again, Amityville, I think there was a lot more going on there. I don't think that happened, not the way they said. And that gives all the other people, like I said, I work a lot with, survivors of rape, usually young children. And, anytime somebody lies about something like that, they don't believe the survivors, and it's like getting abused again. So I think the same way with Haunted House, because some of these are extremely traumatic. the hauntings and things. So please tell us what you would like to tell us about The Conjuring, if you don't mind.
Well, I can state unequivocally that I and my team were the first investigators there on the scene because of the way it happened. It's nothing grandiose about it. It was a domino effect. One thing led to another. I can also state categorically that had our team not been there, had my brother not placed an ad in a local periodical advertising the existence of our team under the aegis of Rhode Island College, if he had not done that, if I had not gone to see a lecture presented by Ed and Lorraine Warren in April of 1972, he talked about chain reaction. If I had not raised my hand when Ed Warren asked certain questions of the audience, and then he, after I raised my hand for 3 of them, he said, "Come up here, young man," and I became part of the lecture. Had I not gotten into my car and gone to Rhode Island College that night to see these ghost hunting couple, none of these movies, of course, James Wan would have still been around, but none of these movies inspired by The Conjuring would have happened. The Conjurings 1, 2, and 3, those movies, Annabelle, none of that franchise would exist if I had not gotten into my car and driven to Rhode Island College that night. And like I said, it's a series of action and reaction. Because after I came up and became an instant celebrity in that lecture, I was kind of good looking back then anyway. And here's this interesting guy, and turns out that I was practicing ritual magic, which I was. In fact, one chapter in my book, Shadow Realms, is the subtitle is "I Was a Teenage Satanist." So Ed Warren went to, but I was well spoken. I had a deep voice. I had very adult mannerisms, even though I was 17 years of age. After that lecture, I was surrounded by a bevy of well-wishers and people with questions like, "Well, tell us more about what you do." And I was also invited to join a team based at Rhode Island College called PIRO, Parapsychological Investigatory and Research Organization. In fact, I devised a logo for them. It's 2 red triangles, inverted triangles, and they had the Greek letters, black letters, stylized, pi and rho. So PIRO.
Nice.
And I had that on all our notebooks and all. I used to be kind of artistic back then.
Yeah, cool.
So we were doing exterior cases. We went to Druid's Dream and Brown Avenue Church, where even though it had burned, arson, we could hear music, pipe organ coming from that church ruin, that chapel ruin. And I could tell you a story to tell a story, but about Brown Avenue and all. But so we did this for about a year, going to exterior cases, and we had some interesting experiences. But we wanted to get into helping people going into haunted houses. Somebody with a haunting in the house, we wanted to get to the bottom of it. Like, can we tell if it's real and genuine just from an investigation? Can we document some strange findings? So to that effect, my brother, that was his idea. He placed an ad in a local periodical, North County Observer. 3 weeks to the day after he placed that ad and it was published, we heard from a Mrs. Carolyn Perrin, who for 2 years had resided with her husband Roger and their 5 daughters in a farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island, a house that was built in 1736. So it had plenty of time to absorb memories. That's only 100 years after Roger Williams founded Providence, Rhode Island. And this was out in the 7-mile no man's land, past what they considered civilization, the land where the savages prowled. So, colonists back then. So they had some strange goings on in their house. Mrs. Perrin came to Rhode Island College to be interviewed. And then she, of course, invited us to her house. And we conducted the first ever paranormal investigation of the Perrin farmhouse, which 40 years later would become known as the Conjuring House because of the Conjuring movie. Apparently, we made quite an impression. And yeah, their house was haunted. I will say it was no more haunted, no more subject to paranormal activity than was my parents' house in North Situate, Rhode Island. Just that we weren't, thinking of being driven out of that house. Or some nights I was. But it was rife with paranormal activity. I never thought it was of the ilk that should drive the family out of the house and lose their investment in the house. But it was interesting to see these things happen, to see when I went upstairs, I heard shuffling around and footsteps upstairs while we were interviewing Mr. and Mrs. Perrin and the girls. And Mr. Perrin had to leave before the interview was complete. But I said, excuse me, I'm hearing somebody upstairs. Do you have company? And Mrs. Perrin and the girls said, no, we hear that almost every day. Here's somebody up there. So I waited for the interview to resume. Donna, our case manager, Donna Eisenstadt, and my brother Keith Johnson, or my twin brother, were interviewing the parents. And I kind of backed out, and I wanted to see what was happening upstairs. Now, it's going to be gangbusters if I don't find anyone up there. I went up there, no, none of the girls, nobody, no guests, nobody was up there. But I was rewarded with an experience out of my right peripheral vision. I'd been up there about a minute, and I saw something dark. It wasn't so much black as just like a hole cut in the fabric of reality. It's just nothing there. So my eye interpreted it as darkness. I saw something dark. I don't remember if it was spiraling or what, but it was coming towards me rapidly. Now I would identify that as a shadow person, just not in form. But my first thought was, there's a fire in the house. I'm going to smell smoke.
Right.
It's a backdraft. I closed my eyes, opened my eyes, it enveloped me, and was gone. I didn't feel any physical sensation from it, just startled. So I went back downstairs. I looked at my brother, gave him the twin look. Yeah, we got something going on here. We all came upstairs to where the girls' bedrooms were, and there was one window that was jammed open. Now, this was August 1973. The rest of the house was sweltering. That room was chill. None of us could get the window closed. I tried. Roger said, no, I can't budge that window. Something jammed it open. Now, I don't know if this was just coincidence and good timing, but it was certainly fascinating. My brother tried an experiment. My brother recited the 23rd Psalm, and he said the holy name of Jesus. He spoke Jesus. When he said Jesus, the window slammed shut.
Wow.
Right on cue. And to further give this a supernatural tone, you heard kind of a slapping sound. And I think it was Judy or Nancy. I think it was Judy, yeah, one of the 5 girls. She suddenly had 3 welts on her face that looked like finger marks, as if she'd been slapped. And she went, ow! So things were going on there. I mean, it was happening. Again, not enough maybe to drive people out unless it was happening every day, but which it was. But and Carolyn was a very suggestive person, the mother, Carolyn Perrin. She's very sensitive, very intuitive, but also suggestible. She was sensitive. And you got a perfect storm there. The 5 girls, at first Roger didn't want to hear about the haunting, but then he started waking up with scratches on his arms he couldn't explain. And a lot of things were happening. So we conducted this investigation for 3 weeks. Things didn't happen in increments of 3 weeks for some reason there. But we'd been away for 2 weeks, and Carolyn, she thought I was the team leader because I had the deep voice and I was giving some directions, like, let's record over here. So Carolyn bonded with me, unlike you see in a certain book that was written about the case. Now, Carolyn and I get along very well. And she would call me every day and tell me about things that were happening in the house. And sometimes we'd just talk and not even talk about the haunting. Became friendly. Well, she was about 10 years older than I. And one time she was slicing an orange. She called me right back because when she was slicing the orange, it looked like blood. It wasn't a blood orange. Just this red fluid seeped out of it. So they wanted us to come back. And I think it was 2 weeks we'd been away. We came back to the Perrin household. And boy, what a difference in Mrs. Perrin. She was a slender woman, quite an attractive lady, slender. Just had a nice country look about her. But she looked like an urbanite that had been transposed to the country. But she was drawn, and she looked like she hadn't eaten or had any liquid in those couple of weeks since we saw her. She was not looking good.
God bless her.
I was actually shocked to see, what has happened to this woman? Stress is doing this to her. And Roger showed us that he was upset, and he showed the scratches on his arm. Now, we're not sure just whose idea it was. Donna says it was her idea. I think it was my brother's. I remember him coming up with it, but it was kind of convergent. that we decided to call in Ed and Lorraine Warren, or at least consult them. We thought it would be a nice professional touch to benefit from the Warrens' vast experience. At no time did we feel we were in over our heads. We didn't need them there to chase out the ghosties. But I remember placing a call to Ed Warren and being on the phone with him. Ed Warren volunteered to come to the site. And I'm thinking, how cool is this? We're going to be working in tandem with the Warrens. I didn't ask him to come in, but since he's volunteered, sure. Like the Perrin family, they'll be inspired by this. Guess who we're bringing? So shortly after that, and I remember talking to Ed on the phone. I said, now I understand we're going to be working together on this case and about, the Perrin household. He said, oh, absolutely. So you'd like our case file? He said, yeah, send them right over, mail them. And I remember a day in September, my brother would know the exact date, September 1973, the Warrens pulled up on what was then a gravel driveway, is again now, and Warrens came up, and I remember opening the door for them and say, Ed and Lorraine, welcome. Come on in. He said, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Carolyn Perrin. And that's how they met. And in later years, Mrs. Warren denied that there was ever any investigating team there in those days. They were, at that time, that year, they were the only investigative couple there, paranormal investigators. And there is photographic evidence. I'm in several photographs in there, in the basement and in the bedroom, as is Donna, our case manager. So, interesting time. We did not know that would be the last time we saw the parents for a while. I wouldn't see them for 4 decades. My brother did in the interim, but I'd been in that house after I came under new ownership. But yeah, we lost out on that case. To this day, Donna, with whom I'm still in touch, Donna is rather embittered by that, and I can understand that. I'll quote Donna. She says, I'm sorry they're gone, but I could never forgive Ed and Lorraine for stealing our case out from under us. And they did. That's exactly what happened. It was, claim jumped. Now, the Warrens felt they were doing right.
Right.
Carolyn didn't call me for, I think it was 16 days afterwards. We had a meeting at Rhode Island College, our team did. I remember saying, well, either the Warrens are very, busy helping them and they're succeeding, they're doing something, or they've succeeded and they don't need us anymore. They don't need any paranormal teams. But for whatever reason, the parents are no longer contacting us. I'm not getting my daily call from Carolyn. And,
yeah, she used to call you like every day, sometimes several times a day. Yeah.
Several times a day. My father would do this newspaper. Who is this woman who keeps calling you? Is this a girlfriend? No, not exactly, Dad. So Carolyn got in touch with me. She apologized for not having been in touch. I was relieved to hear from her. And but we didn't have the case anymore. She said that the Warrens told her and Roger that the only way they could be of any help was if they were the exclusive investigators. We were just some college kids and we could only get in the way.
Just going to get in the way. Yeah.
She said, I guess we got to let the Warrens do their thing. I said, let them do the Warren thing. The Warrens thing. It ended badly, the departure with the Warrens, the severance between the parents and the Warrens. Yes, go on, please.
No, I was going to say, too, that, and again, I'm nobody. I'm just somebody who's been, about as long as you. You've been in this almost 50 years, and that's about how long I've been looking into it. And it just seemed to me that even with, like, Amityville, anybody that was involved before, they had to go because the Warrens, it also seemed that they also had a imagine notion that demons, this is what this is what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
And that's every single case, it seemed to me, and they would push out anybody that was in before because they had to go about it in their way. And if you hear them explain it or you hear them in things, just like you said, Carl, it makes a little sense the way they're explaining it. But again, they're adults and they had to know what they were doing. I mean, it wasn't, They
didn't start out that way, I'm sure. They were interested in paranormal research. And is it a ghost? And what is a ghost? Then they became subjective and started attaching personalities to their ghosts. And then Ed became a demonologist, more interesting. Well, when the case in point, when the Warrens took over the Perrin case, it ceased being an investigation, an objective scientific investigation, and it became an intervention. You know, it was no longer being approached scientifically. Not that we were all that gangbuster scientific. I mean, we had what equipment we did, but we were trying. We were taking measurements. You know how the Warrens are portrayed in The Conjuring, taking our own measurements and wondering, you know, what has Carolyn been watching on television? What has she been reading? That the Warrens, Lorraine Warren had a vision. It was Bathsheba Sherman, who was a true to life character, but never.
She wasn't a witch.
No, she was never demon witch Bathsheba. It was a cool sounding name. Parents' dog, when they lived in Cumberland before, their dog's name was Bathsheba. It's a quaint, funky name. And there's the Black Book of Burrowville. Harrisville is the village in Burrowville. And at least Giamarco Carlson can attest to that because she found that, researched it at Town Hall, rather, in Burrowville. The Black Book had anything outstanding in Burrowville's history for over a century, including the time of Bathsheba Sherman. Bathsheba Sherman was a resident, a neighbor. She probably was in the house at some time because, you know, there wasn't well populated. But if she had done anything, or if she had spilled a milk can, that probably would have been in the Black Book of Records. When cattle died mysteriously, you know, they were concerned about contagion with farm animals. That went into the Black Book. When there was a thievery or a murder, you know, not really spilling a can of milk, but anything really memorable, went in that book. If Bathsheba was anything untoward or sinister, that certainly would have been recorded, and it was not. No record for her doing anything strange. Or she would make poultices for neighbors and things, you know, like little household remedies. But many persons did, many women did back then. Yes, there were deaths in that house. It's a long history, but a lot of these names are confused. Mrs. Brown is not necessarily the Mrs. Brown who hanged herself, and she didn't hang herself when she was 91 years old, and that was in a different place that somebody died, you know, hanged themselves. And yes, somebody committed suicide, but in that house, but it was a man, and it just had nothing to do with the haunting or strange things happening in that house. Everything can be explained. And it would be so much better explained if I had at least Giamarco Carlson, who's the president of the Johnston, Rhode Island Historical Society, where I am now. I'm in headquarters of JHS.
Nice.
These aren't all ghostly records and all that. All this organization is straightening out. You see, I wish I could take credit for it. That's Elise.
Nice. Very
she'll
nice.
hand me things, you know, and all that. But
right.
Yeah, she's an organizer, and she runs the Historical Society. And she did immense research on the Perrin house and the Perrin history. And there's not all that much to do to look. That immense research is just incorporates mostly normal happenings and records. But, you know, whatever strange thing is reported there can be explained. So it doesn't have a chaotic history to it. You know, sure, they sat around telling ghost stories sometimes, and that was a long history. But and there's the previous resident before the Perrins came into possession of the house. He had told Roger Perrin, keep just make sure you keep the lights on at night. What does that mean? You know, kids are around. The area was much more populated by then. Does that mean that lights would go on and off that it was haunted? We don't know what he meant by that. You know? But yes, it was haunted when the Perrins came into possession of that house. But I think the parents had a lot to do with that.
Well, you had 5 girls. Some of them probably going through puberty, the hormones and everything else going off.
They were pretty close in age.
PK and all this other stuff could be happening and going on. And you said that it's possible that she was also very influenceable, Carol, as far as, you know, suggestion. We all know that. You know, even curses. I could go up to somebody as a Native American who was always asking me, you know, where's all the magic you guys do and stuff like that. And I could take a bunch of old chicken bones and throw them down in front of them and go, oh, I got to leave. Oh, I'm sorry. I got to go now. And just go. And if she gets a flat tire, breaks a nail, late for an appointment, it's all going to be because of that curse or
Right.
whatever. Its power of suggestion is very strong. On top of it. Now, we're not saying, Carl is not saying that the house wasn't haunted. What he's saying is they took pieces and parts and a good name and everything else and put it all together and made a story. And if you look at a lot of the different things the Warrens did, it doesn't mean that they were fake or that they didn't have, that Lorraine didn't have any kind of abilities. What it means is that they would go into a place and then they would just basically push everybody out that was out first because they wanted the control, and then they would take it and put it all together, and the next thing you know, you got a book. Next thing you know, you got a movie.
Yes.
It happened every single time.
Right, and Lorraine lost her objectivity that way because she was gifted a clairsentient, clairaudient. When she heard that name Bathsheba and it resonated within her, she looked outside and got a vision. That was, adjudicated. That the house is demonically haunted. Mrs. Perrin is being tormented by the demon witch Bathsheba Thayer Sherman. If they even knew her maiden name at the time. And I just don't think that was the case at all, because the parents had haunting things happening to them when they were in Cumberland. And they left Cumberland because they were not popular. People thought they were spook people. They were someplace away from that.
Wow, see, I didn't know that part, yeah.
Yeah, the Warrens just had a different methodology.
Right. And it was new. I mean, if you think about it, we remember the 70s, for Pete's sakes. We
remember. It wasn't so popular.
No, it wasn't. You got parapsychology a little bit, if you remember back, when the early times where you had In Search Of, and of course I think Unsolved Mysteries might have come around not long after that. Everybody was a parapsychologist. Everybody who was the little expert in the corner. And keep in mind, Carl has been that little expert in the corner on many a show. So,
I probably wouldn't be into this if it wasn't for Leonard Nimoy In Search Of.
Right. I mean, it was wonderful. Wasn't it wonderful the way they did it? They told a little bit about the history. Yeah, they told a little of the history of the, and the lore.
They had a half-an-hour episode minus commercials, and they pulled it off. I didn't know that somebody could experience recording a spirit voice when I did it. I was recording with a friend because I was recording a magic ritual as a demonstration. And, so we're listening to the recording, my friend Mark and I, and we played back the audio recording, cassette recorder, and towards the end of the recording, we heard this, what sounded like a voice in slow motion. We heard thump, thump, and then it sounds like it's saying, "Someone help me."
Oh.
And then, so we looked at each other, Mark and I, we played it again and again. I said, "That sounds like it's saying, 'Someone help me.'" Well, his recorder could speed it up. You could speed it up, had a little dial on it. You could make it go faster, accelerate the audio recording. And at a certain speed, it comes out clearly saying, "Carl, help me. Help." Like Ben Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, what is that? Wow. Is that a voice from my future? Is it a spirit voice thinking I can help it because I did magic rituals? I never knew what to do for that spirit. How can I help you? But I didn't know. I said, "Oh boy, somebody can record a spirit voice." The only time it's ever happened, maybe. I didn't know that happens. It's called EVP, electronic voice phenomena. I discovered mine by accident.
I wanted to make sure I got this in here. It's from Lauren, and she says, "I remember, Carl, that you and your brother helped me and my housemates years ago, and something about an article in the Atlantic Paranormal. Thank you." So that is from Lauren, and wow. So you helped them out, and there's been a few going through here that, that's the thing. When you're on shows like that and you speak the truth and you tell it like it is, and, and I think a lot of times people respect the fact that we say we don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't have that answer now. My theory might be this now or that, just the honest part of it. I think that's the thing we're getting sick of, is people that come in and, everything is something. I think that the shows when they started and got to the Ghost Hunters, which was, I think, probably one of the first teams that went out there with all the science and stuff. Of course,
Yes.
they did it on sightings. They had so many parapsychologists. They were working on the Sally case on that one. The Entity, I believe, maybe they dabbled in on that one a little bit. But it was all parapsychologists and lots of tech. But they also brought in mediums, and they looked into the history, and they were a little bit more reasonable about it, I think. Then everybody started to get into it. Now it's just these big shows where everything is I guess sensationalized. You gotta sell tickets,
Right.
So, and that's
Have
all
a
part of
charisma
it.
to it.
Right. But for real people that go in there and do these things, you and I, Carl, know that, it could take weeks, it could take months, it could take, whatever, if you've got a case that's that big. But the Conjuring, if you guys had got in there, I mean, the amount of time you were in there, look at what you were able to find out. You were trying, like you said, you're taking measurements, you're looking into mental health. Is anybody on pharmaceuticals? Is there abuse in the home? Is there alcoholism? Is there this? Is there that? And you're looking at all the history of things. You said, like, even to the point of having the black book and knowing that
Yes.
Bathsheba wasn't doing the things that they said. But that's what they do. They take it and then they sensationalize and make it. And meanwhile, there's a house probably on that block that's going through real issues and real,
Right.
That's the infuriating thing. That's why I keep bringing up Amityville, and a mile away there's the Haunted with the Searles, who again say that because their movie was made for TV, they had a lot of say. They had a lot of on the set, in their contract, that you're not putting anything on there that which is, I think, so smart.
Yeah, I wish it was always that way.
Yeah, but it's not. It's not. It's not even in the little shows. You can talk to Jack Kenna, will tell you that, it's not all it's cracked up to be being on the TV, because you tell your story and then, he's used to it. You come back and there's like all these things that he's not even saying going on, for the.
I saw Jack a week and a day ago. Jack
Yeah.
and Charlie. Yeah.
I love them. I love them so much.
You
But
can't
see,
help
that's.
but-
Oh gosh, yeah. But so that's one of the things. Now, the Conjuring, I wanted to make sure that we got that on there. Again, I'm not saying that the parents or this or that. I'm not saying that. I just wanted to let Carl say, because there are pictures of him there, and then they're saying he wasn't there. And I think at one point in time you were going to be put in the movie as a bad guy.
How do you know all these things? Yeah.
Because I researched my guests, honey. I researched
Thank
my
you.
guests. You're welcome.
Oh,
But-
yeah. That was a palpable concern at the time,
Mm-hmm.
because the one who told me that said it was involved in the production, said, you really should do something about that because they are going to portray you in that movie.
Mm.
And I had to take it seriously.
Mhm.
Would I have been? I don't know. Probably not. But, it was certainly real at the time. And this was in association with the producer
Mhm.
of the Conjuring movies. So, he was named. He had brought up my name and introduced it, into pre-production. So he knew of me. Oh, I had to take that seriously. And it's a regret of mine that my last communication with Mrs. Lorraine Warren was actually I mailed a writ of cease and desist to her, with a proviso at the end, a personal note I wrote, say, this does not sound like the Mrs. Warren I remember, but I have to protect my reputation.
Absolutely.
I didn't know where it was going, I mean, they say there's no such thing as bad publicity, but this would have been bad.
There is.
I would have spent the rest of my career in the paranormal lecturing to the custodian out in the audience, saying, I know I didn't do those things,
Yeah.
With a smoke, this fire, so.
Absolutely.
And I just wish I had a nice so long to Mrs. Warren,
Mhm.
a nice sunset.
They definitely had a banter about them. They had
Oh, they did, yes.
yeah, didn't they? it was just really cool. I mean, I didn't get to see them live in lecture. I wish I had, but you know, the amount of stories that I've read and books and things like that of people doing basically just what you did. In fact, that's what the Searles did. A friend went and to one of their lectures at the college and came back and said, "You gotta, maybe if we call them, they can come in here and help, because these people were really being destroyed." I mean, I think the dad in the family was actually attacked and raped by I don't know what you call it, succubus and incubus, I don't know, but he was attacked. And for this
that would be a succubus if it was the, like,
there you go,
assaulting a male.
Right, but for this man in the 70s, a hardworking company man, father of probably 5 or 6, to admit this to his family, to sit there and cry and explain what had happened to his wife, and for the daughter to walk in at the breakfast table the next morning, seeing her father crying, said, "I thought he got fired. I thought something happened to my grandparents." This is a sincere thing that I don't believe a 50-year-old man that just wants to go to work and pay his bills would bring up for no reason. They certainly weren't making money on the book, because the Warrens got the. It just doesn't seem to me that somebody like that would make something like that up. Not for a man in the 70s, to put up with the heckling and stuff from the boys at the shop.
It certainly has a ring of authenticity to it, doesn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
you mentioned
the
the Warrens. The Warrens with their banter. I'm neither pro nor con about Ed and Lorraine Warren. I don't have any resentment against them. It's so long ago. I didn't have resentment against them then. Well, maybe a couple of times. Yeah. When Ed would describe me in a newspaper or magazine article, he is a born leader. The parents of his friends should be warned. They don't need to say that.
Why even? Yeah, why
no,
even?
I know. But when you saw Ed and Lorraine, and it's like Wyatt Earp. Mm-hmm. If you read every detail of Wyatt Earp's, his biography and autobiography and the truth behind it.
He was a scoundrel.
It's actually a biography by his wife, Josephine Earp. He was kind of a scoundrel. He was a self-promoter. Mm-hmm. Was he heroic? Oh, certainly. Was he brave and bold? Yeah, he was. Mm-hmm. Was he a scoundrel, a conniver, or a self-promoter? Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. In fact, he was combing the Hollywood sets, the old Hollywood sets in the silent film days, promoting himself for a movie, Unfortunately, Wyatt Earp never lived to see the movie, because he died in 1929, the movies about him. But, he met a young actor. I got a sideline with this for a moment. He met a young actor on a movie set. Name was, Marion Morrison was the young actor. Marion Morrison. And he was a stuntman in action films, just breaking into the silent films. Mm. And this actor was so impressed by Wyatt Earp that he took on his mannerisms and his way of speaking, kind of played Wyatt Earp, the real life Wyatt Earp played him. And of course, Marion Morrison isn't going to look good in the credits, so that actor, that tall, strapping actor, changed his name to John Wayne.
As soon as you said Marion, I knew.
That's
Isn't that something, though? Isn't that something?
And the same with the Warrens in that sense. Mm-hmm. They were larger than life. Well, Ed became larger and larger, but they were, and self-promoters, of course. Mm-hmm. But they were the people you see in that movie. In a sense, they don't. So Patrick Wilson doesn't look a lot like Ed Warren when you just see the actor. But if you see that scene in the first movie, or all the movies, but the scene in The Conjuring, where Carolyn Perrin is seeking, Vera Farmiga is, that's Lorraine Warren, but Carolyn Perrin is seeking help, and she goes to see the Warrens at a lecture hall. Doesn't say just where they are; they're at a lecture hall, and you see them bantering with each other and kind of teasing each other. Ed and Lorraine, Vera Farmiga, and Patrick Wilson, and somebody in the audience says, "So, listen, you're a ghost hunter. So, what do people really call you?" And Ed says, he looks at Lorraine, he goes, "Kooks."
Kooks.
Kooks. And they are charming, and that is like looking at Ed and Lorraine. That's when you see that, you're watching Ed and Lorraine, because that's what they were like in real life. Mm-hmm. and you had to like them. You had to want to listen to them. Well, some people, they had detractors too. And I saw them get treated very badly during a lecture one time, and I didn't like that at all.
Mm-mm.
Kind of stuck up for them. I didn't want to stand up and say something. I said, do we want to hear these people speak, or do we just want to leave? What do we want? And then Warren said, look, if you don't want to hear me, I will take my check, which is quite large, and just leave now.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a religious college.
Oh.
Providence College at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But to listen to them, so wait, do you have those pictures? You have that file, don't you, Lorraine? Ed, I told you to pack them. I remember telling you did no such thing. I did. You love these people because they're real people at that moment.
Yeah.
And so what if that was their trade? That was their ghost hunters.
That was their thing. They were very good at it.
And without charisma, they wouldn't be so known.
Right. But again, it didn't end in the Conjuring movie the way it ended. It didn't end well at all, did it? It ended with a seance, did it not?
Yes, it ended. That's a good term for it. It ended with a seance. It was Devil's Night, October 30th, 1973. The Warrens were there because we had been there.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, they've got this haunting, and they're saying it's demonic, and parents might be driven out of their house. So what's Lorraine's solution? Ed and Lorraine's solution? Have a seance. Call in a ghost to understand the ghost. Maybe the ghost will figure it out. If we call in a ghost, the ghost will tell us what the ghost wants.
We can trust the ghost because the ghost is going to
They
tell
always-
us the truth.
Because the dead always have this information.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a seance, and you got suggestible Carolyn Perrin. I'm not saying Carolyn was contriving. I'm just saying that she was suggestible, influenced, and the girls were by her. And yeah, it was real. It was an encapsulated reality. It was real then.
Great way to put it.
Yeah, and reality can be manufactured without making anything up, drawing on what's there and emulsifying it. So Lorraine suggested a seance. They have her medium come in, and they have a priest come in. Sounds like I'm setting up a joke. Yeah, 2 mediums and a priest come into a room, and, which really happened. And Roger comes back, and Roger's been on the road selling his silver and jewelry, and comes in, and he finds a seance set up, and it's the night before Halloween. He says, so they're already here. We'll let them go through with their mumbo jumbo. Maybe it'll help. What happens during the seance is Carolyn feels she's taken over. Carolyn starts mumbling, and what they thought was another language, but it was incoherent. I wasn't there, but I heard from people who were there. Carolyn starts chanting and murmuring. Then at a certain point, Carolyn's body is flung out of her chair 9 feet away into the next room. They measured it. 9 feet away into the next room. That was genuine psychokinesis, genuine unseen force. And she's unconscious on the floor. They thought she might die. Of course, Roger ran over. They were having friction in their marriage, but he loved her. And he ran over to Carolyn. And regretfully, Ed Warren stood there over him, said, tried to block his way and said, you must never touch the possessed. He was telling her husband not to go to her when she's stricken. And he's adjudicating her as possessed. You must never touch the possessed. Ed, so Roger stood up and socked Ed. And in fact, when he tells that story, he says, I think Ed lost that tooth,
That was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. And he tells it more dramatically than do I. And Roger ordered them out in that frenzy, like, that's it. No more paranormal teams in this house. They're just doing damage. Look what they've done to my wife. So mysteriously, though, Ed conducted an interview with Carolyn Perrin after that instance. And he said it was like November 2nd.
Okay.
November 1st. Actually, no, it was November 1st, and it's recorded. Where did they conduct that interview if the Warrens weren't welcome there? And it was so soon after the incident.
True.
Why did Carolyn concur with everything Ed said? But Ed was leading in that interview. He was saying, now, my name is Ed Warren, and you have called me in to help you. That is correct. She said, yes, that's correct. She's obviously influenced, too.
Right.
It's mysterious how the Warrens got to her. Did they actually meet back at the house? Did they go someplace and say it was the house? Can't put that together. You can't ask. It's too long ago. Can't ask Carolyn these days.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's an absolute shame what that family went through, and I know
It
other
is.
families going through it. I mean, I don't know, Carl. Are you seeing with obviously the fear and pain and sorrow and everything that's going on this past year and a half, are you seeing an uptick of cases of at least hauntings, or do you think that negative energy feeds on this fear and energy? Are they dancing right now in our dilemma? What's going
Well, I
on?
think James will concur with me that there is an increase in these cases, the negative ones, the hauntings altogether.
Mm-hmm.
That is happening. People just interpret it more as demonic, but yeah, a lot of that is happening. It's increasing in this age of enlightenment when we are supposed to know so much more about psychological influences and what psychokinesis can do. It's and can emulate and even create a haunting. Yet there are more hauntings reported.
Mm-hmm.
People are more interested in it. Communication is better
Mm-hmm.
wrought, and I think more stuff is happening. Whether
Mm-hmm.
it's seeping in from another reality, I don't know. But more people know about it, more people are interested, and
Mm-hmm.
more ghost hunting shows. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, I was on the first 2 years of Ghost Hunters, as was my twin brother. We
Mm-hmm.
left of our own volition,
Mm-hmm.
done it enough. And it's just
That was
more
a
of it now.
great show. I mean, it had a good run. It was a great,
Yes.
show.
Yep.
The
Remember
first
that?
couple of years, first couple
The
of
early
years was
years.
so good. Yeah, they're so good. And I'll tell you, if you read the books that they wrote before, when they were just plumbers and they were seeking
Yeah.
before they got the show, very intriguing. And they did it. They were hesitant to go into contract for that. The same reason we've been talking about tonight, but they did it to try to help to bring more awareness and understanding and things like that too. And and then later on, I think a lot of production and editing, and we need more. Gotta sell tickets, but again, most of the people get into this with just pure wonderment. I want to understand it, and then everybody settles. I mean, look, you've been in this for so long, Carl, and you're one of the people that sit there and say, I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I can tell you, I saw this happen. The glove got me because it reminded me so much of the beginning of The Exorcist. I mean, there was a figure or something found and brought across, and that was supposed to be the element, and then the Ouija board opened it up, and then they went through the whole thing. I get that because I think in some ways that's true to life. I hear a lot about it when we started with Desert Storm and all of that, going over our soldiers going to the Middle East and bringing back things. You heard a lot more about the jinn and
Yes.
different cultures around the world. What do you think about the jinn? Do you have any thoughts on if is that just another name for demon, or do you think that's a whole different entity together?
Well, it's a cultural term, and it's interpreted by their cultures there.
Mm-hmm.
It's real.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, could I successfully perform an intervention, an expulsion, or whatever we call it, an investigation? Somebody that is of Islamic faith or Jewish, I believe I could help
Mm-hmm.
because it transmutes, it takes on the form of its container, but it's the same
Oh.
essence.
Mm-hmm.
It's a spirit.
Mm-hmm.
It's partly um, an energy displacement, a mind thing, that becomes real and takes on an evanescent life of its own.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interpreted differently in different cultures, and they have different remedies.
Mm-hmm.
Just like our spirits, the jinn is not always malevolent. Sometimes they are. If you get on the wrong side, they can help you or they can harm you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we tend to call ours angels and demons.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for you, it's an angel. If it's bad, it's a demon.
Mm-hmm.
But they're both inhuman.
Mm-hmm.
Never walk the earth in human form, as Ed Warren would say.
Mm-hmm.
I think they all have their origins in the human mind, but they take on a life.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just interpreted differently, but it's the same stuff,
Mm-hmm.
same substance. Jinn,
Mm-hmm.
demon, spirit, perhaps
Mhm.
even angel.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get into the extraterrestrials, and it becomes even more complex. And then you get into ultra terrestrials, and then you're like, where are you now?
Where are you now? There's just so much out there that can go against us. And I had Donnie Chow asked a question a little while ago, but I didn't want to interrupt you. But I'd love to get that one in.
You
Why
have
don't
to.
angels intervene more? Basically what he was saying is, how can a possession happen if there's angels? Well, I think first of all, they're both angels,
Yes.
but I think it has a lot more to do with the host, the person. I think it has a lot to do with free will and things like that, because I know when I've called on angels to help me with something negative, it happens, but I have to ask. So I don't know how you feel about this, Carl, because I don't think
Yeah.
they
Go
can
on.
just go around just stopping things. It's like the same question when somebody says, why did my car hit the tree? Why did my guardian angel stop me? Well, maybe you were supposed to hit the tree. Bad things are going to happen. You know what I mean, though? Bad things are going to happen to us. But also, it's free will. I think we have free will, and we have to ask for the help, and we have to mean it. And we also have to believe, I believe. That's my thoughts. What are your thoughts, Carl?
Do angels have free will to come and go as they choose? Yes and no. They're more constrained. They're under more scrutiny.
Mm-hmm.
But angels are also created beings, and they're limited. My brother Keith would expound more on this.
Mm-hmm.
They're created, so they're not omniscient. They can do only so much, but they can't bilocate. They can create illusion of bilocation, being two places at once, but they can't really be and act in two places at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's only so much they can do.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
George Carlin, the comedian, has passed on. He did a skit called Religious Lift.
Ah.
And he became much more caustic about it, and acerbic in his later years about this routine, about denying the existence of God. But you can apply this to angels, But George Carlin said, with all his vitriol, and which got worse as he got older, I think he wanted to be the new Jackie Mason, and he wanted to be remembered as, somebody who really had a statement, really, really made Lenny Bruce. He wanted to be a Lenny Bruce.
Yeah.
He did. He was George Carlin on his own. But
he spit a lot of truth, that's for sure.
yeah, he did. And some of those were disturbing, the truth. Like, he said, like one of his routines, he said, "Oh, I can see it out there." And you're saying, some of you were saying, "Oh, he's not going to talk about children." Oh, yes, he is.
Oh, yes, he is.
They're not all so sweet, and some of them are rather unpleasant to look at.
Yeah.
And he said, and in his bit Religious Lift, he said, people will ask, how can a God who's benevolent allow this kind of suffering to go on?
Mm-hmm.
You can't help it, lady. He's subject to physical laws. And he said about, why does God always come from someplace and go to someplace? This implies the traversing of physical space. Why doesn't he just show up?
Just show
This implies the traversing of physical space, So, and he said, because he's only slightly superior. And you had, whatever your take, you had to laugh.
Yeah, you had to laugh. Yeah, you had to laugh. But like I said in the beginning, I want a copy of this rule book, because people ask me all the time on this show.
Try to write at least a pamphlet on that.
Yeah,
the rules that don't apply.
Yeah, yeah, and and why these things happen, and why again, if we didn't have the bad, we wouldn't appreciate the good. That's a kind of an overall look at things. To get through suffering, Lord knows I've been through it, I've seen it, but people ask me, well, how could you go through losing a child? How could you go through losing your whole family when you were young, and all this other stuff, and still believe? And my first answer was, how can I not? Because if I don't have hope, if I don't have a belief in something that's good, I can't. I just can't go on. I have to have a faith that there's something else out there bigger than myself. And that has beauty in it and has hope. Because to me, I can see the beauty in a storm. I can see the beauty in, everything. There's beauty everywhere. It depends on your perspective and how you look at it.
It is a beautiful world.
It can very well be.
Existence.
Yeah. And Jackie's asking, are demons fallen angels? And I've also heard that something about the souls of the Nephilim that died. I don't know. I don't know. What is your answer to that? Do we know what the demons are?
It falls under the realm of the big Dunno, Dunno. Having said that, it has taken on a reality in Christian theology, and the difference between mythology and theology resides in one's degree of acceptance. In other words, to what degree one embraces one or the other. Now, H.P. Lovecraft should have said that, and I'm not the first one to say it. I'm just putting it in my own terms. That I'm the first one to put it just that way. That one person's mythology is another person's theology, and all mythology was once theology. Believed it, except like Tolkien. It's obviously mythical, but the Grecian and later Roman deities were all thought to be real and forces of nature, and had to be appeased and pleased. Now they're the ancient myths. Cathonicist, studies these. I like to think of myself as a cathonicist, but nobody's going to invite you to parties. You say you're a demonologist, you get the invitations. And also you clear sections of a restaurant if you start talking shop.
Yeah.
Now what became real? It is real to millions of people, I think, millions of Catholics, millions of Christians, was that eons ago, we don't know when because it's not chronicled. It could have happened shortly before man was created on Earth. There was a big revolt, a conflagration, a celestial revolt, where Lucifer, an archangel, on par with, if not stronger than Michael, Michael, Raphael, the archangels. He was a beautiful, magnificent being, a created being under God, but thought he had an exaggerated sense of entitlement. Lucifer did not like human beings being put over him, and he must have heard that was going to be the plan. Adam was coming, if not already on Earth. Maybe Adam was already conceived. Maybe Adam existed when Lucifer had the big fall. We don't know what the time spans were. But Lucifer had this hatred, this resentment against humankind and what humans would beget. So he revolted. He had enough follow. He was charismatic and magnificent sufficiently that 1/3 of the heavenly host, whatever they were, angels, were following Lucifer, and they rose up against God in stern consternation. They rose up against God Almighty, Jehovah. So Lucifer must have been very influential to incite them against God, because they'd seen God. So it had to be a battle. The heavenly host overthrew those that rebelled. Those that rebelled were cast out of heaven. They fell down into the earth or the pit. Those that landed on the earth became the Nephilim. Perhaps all of those that were thrown out of heaven became the Nephilim. Nephilim is Hebraic for fallen ones. Old Hebrew, fallen ones, Nephilim. And there are stories about them too. There are legends of giants on the earth. Those were the Nephilim. Some people go into more detail. Some stories of them. They had 6 fingers and 6 toes and 2 rows of teeth. The Nephilim were created in another version, the one that most theists or theologians embrace. They mated with angels, or rather, let me clarify it. The angels saw human beings, human females, and found them fair, and they mated with the human women. The angels did. That was a no-no. A big revolt, a big taboo. And strangely, they produced. This is where it gets really fascinating, even as a myth or believed in. The offspring of the angels and the humans were giants. Those were the Nephilim, the fallen ones. So you got these two stories of how the Nephilim came to be. They were some of the fallen angels, or the fallen angels mated with human females, or angels that were not at that time fallen, just somewhat disobedient, mated with human females. Sounds kind of extraterrestrial, doesn't it? Mated with the human females and produced these titanic offspring, the Titans. And these were the mighty ones of old, of whom many tales are told in Scripture. And they were eventually overthrown by humans in great battles. Humans outnumbered them. And when their blood seeped into the earth, into the soil, the fallen Nephilim, the slain Nephilim, the vapors from that blood rose up and made demons. There we have another story. I like this. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men, listen to that etymology, that interpretation. The sons of God
smart
saw
chat,
that
boy.
the daughters of men were fair and came unto them and brought forth children, the Nephilim, men of old, giants. And in one version of the scripture, it says, of whom these were the mighty men of old, of whom many tales are told. They were these titanic beings. Okay, that's great mythology. The Hebrews had to talk about something, to explain themselves. Until we start finding remains of giants. And when I say giants, I don't mean just, 6'6", very tall for the time, 2 meters. I mean, these beings are sometimes 8 and 9 feet tall. There are specimens 9 feet tall. To put that in perspective, you think of Robert Wadlow, the tallest man who ever lived, ever been recorded. There are movies of him from the 1930s, but he wasn't a mighty man. His system was weakened because of his, he was still growing. When he died, he would have reached 9 feet. He was 1/2 inch short of being 9 feet tall.
That's the one we see in the Guinness Book of World Records, the guy, the tall.
Yeah. Yes, that's him. And he said he had this deep voice, of course, and his arm swung at his side. But that weakened his system, and he couldn't actually. His foot had become infected from a brace he had to wear, and when that became infected, he couldn't feel the pain because it took too long to travel, and it traveled imperfectly. That sensation.
Wow.
So he died when he was 22 or 21 years of age. I believe he was 22 years of age when he died. He was still growing. He could have reached well over 9 feet, but the human system can't really take that. But unless their bones are adapted and their circulation is genetically adapted to that, we find these titans. You look at their skulls; they're huge. They're big people. They lived. They're real. Why isn't this generally known or known throughout the world? Well, in a sense, it is, but because it doesn't jive.
Doesn't fit the narrative.
Timeline. Yeah. And so it's like, hey, oddity, put it away in the bottom of a basement. Show a picture of it. We can't explain. Most people will think it's faked anyway, like UFOs. People think it's fake. So, but there are.
Wouldn't you love to go into the basement of the Smithsonian with a flashlight and look at all the boxes in there? Yeah.
Put on my Indiana Jones hat, or I'd rather put on my Mike Ricksecker hat.
Figure it all out. We're not supposed to know all the stuff that we know, but we're diggers by nature. We're inquisitive people, and we just want to know the truth. Good, bad, indifferent, ugly, whatever. We can handle it.
Go into the concealed, sequestered archives of the Vatican. The Vatican is recognized as a nation with its own government and voting system, its own election, its own supreme pontiff. So what do they have there? That's supposed to be a vast repository of arcane knowledge.
Yes, and stuff that we're just not allowed to, know. They can't handle that. That's just it's awful.
Yes, you've pushed my buttons. That's why I stayed on longer than I expected.
Yes, thank you so much.
I do want to give my greetings to Mrs. Elise Giammarco Carlson, who. Is Panorama Paranormal.
Okay, let me see if I can get that bigger for you. Let's see if we can get you up here. Hold
not even the best of our cards. We have one with their picture on it.
I can't get you bigger, but I can if
No,
there's somebody's got a bigger screen to be able to see it.
you
Say the
can't
name
see it.
again.
It says Panorama Paranormal.
Okay. Panorama
Panorama
Paranormal.
Paranormal. That name was conceived of by Elise Carlson, and she's the president of Johnston Historical Society. I think she's a wonderful archivist and researcher. I'm a sincere archivist, but a lousy one. I lose things. I let them get wet. I don't bother with them. You know, I'm terrible, but I'm
Oh
sincere.
gosh.
Yeah, and but she does the deed. She's a good archivist, and she'll do the extra distance to research if people come up and say, "I believe I had a great uncle who lived and worked in Johnston, Rhode Island," or I have someone who lived in the early 1800s in Johnston and might be buried there. She'll give them a report. She'll
That's
do
wonderful.
it. She just, I don't want to promote her too much because she'll get more requests, but she'll just do it. Older.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful. I think we're losing a lot of that, but I think it's starting to come back. I'm talking to a lot of younger generation people that are coming through that are getting interested in history again, and I think that that's very important. It's very important,
Yeah.
especially if you're interested in the paranormal, like we said too
Yes.
on earlier shows. Everything was the history. Tell the
Oh
the
yeah, that's how it
story.
started out. These shows, like In Search of and all that. Do the background research. Now I'm not Elise's press agent, but I am impressed with what she does. She would not deign to call herself a parapsychologist, not yet, but she is a student of parapsychology. She's studying at the Rhine Center, continuing education, Rhine Institute, J.B. Rhine, his wife, and she takes a very practical and pragmatic approach to the paranormal. But she believes in ghosts. Now, how can you be a logical person? Debunker it sometimes. Not a rabid one, but
Yeah.
she's the one who, like, we were in a certain house that we've mentioned during the program, and there was a paranormal team. You notice how whenever we say this name, it's getting dark in here because what we're talking about, it's getting darker. Now it's still getting darker, and so Elise goes over to where they had a chandelier. The homeowner, she goes, "This might help a little bit." She screws in the loose light bulb. That dispelled the darkness. But that is so typical. And she doesn't do it in a mean way. But we'll talk about it afterward. And and yet she knows there is paranormal influence. She knows there are ghosts. Demons, don't know.
Don't know.
I could one definition I have for a demon is a poltergeist with a really lousy attitude. I have seen a poltergeist case. I've seen a poltergeist in action. It was magnificent. Nothing will grab your attention like that. Seeing things fly across the room. While we were there, usually you hear, "Oh, hell broke loose after you guys left." Now, one case I had, it was happening while we were there. Even manifested, saw it physically, and not just what it was throwing around, which was a lot. And it was crockery, but it wasn't a crock. Things were flying around, and magnificent to observe that. I wish I had more documented evidence of it. I have a little bit. But yeah, she would interpret a demon as, again, dunno, but that's personification of a malevolent force. Giving and imbuing it with a personality, giving it all kinds of attributes. Maybe it has them. Maybe it has them for a while. Like Lloyd Arbar, Lloyd with one L. He does not believe in demons because he says that's magic, that's supernatural.
Yes,
I know there are things that behave like demons for a while. Then they run out of juice. They run out of steam. But it's just wonderful that you can speculate so much about what these forces are and imbue them with personalities. Now, I don't normally accept the standard definition of what is a demon and how it behaves. But when you're in a situation where you're smelling strange, unexplained odors, the room does get dark, genuinely. At least one member of the family is being influenced. It seems to change their personality. It's hard not to define that as a demon. The Ed Warren definition of a demon. His was very direct. You are marked by the demonic realm. If you pursue them, they will cause objects to move, heavy objects. They'll basically act like a poltergeist. What does a poltergeist do? It scares you. Poltergeist is devoted to drawing attention to itself. So you can't really prove that there are demons. It's a subjective acceptance, subjective definition. You can prove that the world is round, but there are people today who don't accept that definition. Because you look straight and you see some mountains and bumps, but you don't see, a globe. You do and you don't. You go in an airplane, you can see that globe where it ends.
And there's definitely things on both sides that, if you listen to it, that's the way it is. It's like you said, we're unfortunately Ms. Perrin, and again, we're not saying that family didn't go through stuff. We're not saying that at all.
They certainly did go through stuff.
They
yes.
absolutely did. But when you see a movie that's based on actual events, I just get, a little upset when I see that I know others are going through this and they're not, and it takes away from them. It takes away from them. Just like, somebody is a victim of anything, a robbery, a rape, anything, abuse, and then somebody lies about it. It's like that. So, that's why I started this with, what movies do you think, are good? I'm definitely going to watch The Right. I don't think I've ever seen that, so I'm definitely going to watch it.
I haven't seen it till James and I watched it together. I just missed it here and there.
Yeah. I'd love to watch it. But before I let you go, you have been extremely generous with your time, Carl. I want to invite you back anytime. Please get the book. Also, all the mods have been absolutely wonderful tonight. The chat's been wonderful tonight. Terrific
I want everybody
questions.
they say I've come and helped them at some time when I was a member of the Atlantic Paranormal Society or other times. Get in touch with me. There's the ubiquitous Facebook.
There you go. They just dropped your Facebook. Oh, that's terrific. Absolutely, let's do that.
Facebook page, yeah.
And you guys you're on Instagram and everything else as the duo.
Branched out.
Right. And we've got all those links. Get the book. Watch, you can watch Carl pull up the, the first 2 seasons of Ghost Hunters and, look in the Haunted on Animal Planet. We can get all those now on demand and watch him. Watch the expertise and how he explains things. I don't know how much they cut out or, you've said more and they take it out of context or whatever, but you've always, your integrity has always been, you're just right up there for me, Carl, and everybody in this chat. And I just love to talk with people that I've watched for years. And, we've watched your career. Like I said, you're at a disadvantage because I know more about you than you know about me and the chat here. But everybody loves you. Everybody loves you. And we definitely want to have you back. Thank you so much for spending this time. If you go out tonight, can you give my chat a little something of maybe how not to be affected by negative energies? Is it just keeping your vibration high? Is it, finding whatever belief you have that keeps you in that positive light? What is it, Carl?
Take these things seriously, but don't dread them. Don't feed into them. You don't need to. They are fascinating to someone else who's not personally involved. They can't really harm you. They can mess with you. But they're not going to steal your soul. They're not going to possess you, not without an invitation. And then even if that happens, there are people who can and will help you. You are stronger than them. They can't take away your home. They lack bodies. They're envious. They don't like us because of that. But they, like all living or imaginal creatures that somehow become real, they all want recognition. They all want substantiation. They all are saying, I'm here. Look at me. Recognize me. I matter. I'm here. I may have to mess with your sleep to convince you, but I'm here. That's what these spirits are saying. We lack the clinical nomenclature. We say demons and ghosts and spirits. I sometimes make up my own words for them. And then they're accepted. But I've done that with a few, but they have to be, intelligent root words too. But that's neologism is creating your your words, and then they become real if enough people accept them. So
Dread
just
and the
don't
fear.
run out of your house because of them. Don't think you have to abandon pursuits. They may keep after you, or they'll convince you that they are. But there are ways to counter them. You can get a support system. I don't know how I went through my teen years where I would be woken up by bangings. I'd move my bedroom down to the basement. Smart thing to do. I don't know. But I'd seen a lady, spirit of a lady down there. Well, I had to move before that happened, I moved my bedroom down there, where we used to hear clunking around, and the dehumidifier would move across the floor. We'd find furniture store down there rearranged. Well, I moved my bedroom down there, and then after some months, I think it was, the noises started again. I said, "No, I'm down here, and it's happening." So one time it was so noisy down there in the basement, nobody else but me down there. I said, "I can't sleep here. I got to go upstairs where it's safe." I went to the couch, and this is my parents' house in North Scituate, Rhode Island. Bang, bang. Something is hammering on the roof and reverberating. I went out there the next day to see if any branch could have done that. No. So I was like, where do I go? I don't dare go out and sleep in a car. But I got through it. I wish some of those things would happen again. I wish they'd happen with other people around. So all my siblings heard it. In fact, if you see an episode of A Haunting, I was on several of those.
That was a great show. Love that show.
I'll be in one by year's end. It should be showing sometime this month. We're just waiting for the announcement of when this is going to be showing on Discovery Plus, which was the travel channel, wherever you can find it. And there's an episode that was released in December 2nd, 2016. And it's an episode, it's their ninth season, I believe. Then it was the ninth season. It's called Dangerous Games. A Haunting. Is the series Dangerous Games.
Dangerous Games.
It illustrates the story of these three teenagers out in rural central Rhode Island who start experimenting with a spirit board. And they start to get answers. They start asking questions to get more answers. And they run into some complications because of this spirit board play. And they have to seek help from someone. Well, that tells my story. Oh, it's, capsule.
Wow.
Capsule and all that. But that's, they have an actor portraying me, an actor portraying my twin brother, and an actor portraying my sister, an actor portraying my mother, and an actor portraying my father, God rest their souls. My mother used to say, "That woman looks nothing like me." Mom, actually, and this wasn't too long ago. I lost my mom in 2019.
God bless her.
Yeah, yes, he does, I'm sure. And she'd be sitting there watching it. "That woman looks nothing like me." I said, "Mom, actually, she does. They got an actor who looks like you. Why can't you be happy with that?" They didn't blow her up and make her big like they did to my father and make him look overweight when he was funny.
It's so funny.
Yeah, I got a message.
How they do that sometimes.
Oh, I know it. My father, he was, I wouldn't even call him portly. He never weighed as much as I do now. He never weighed over 200 pounds. And I got a message on Facebook the next day after that episode premiered from my cousin Karen, his niece. "What's up with fat Uncle Lenny?"
It's funny. I mean, that show does that, but I think they tell the story well. It's hard to say because I've talked to Bill Bean, and he said they tried to portray his was.
They always have a good-looking person playing Bill Bean, don't they?
He's usually playing himself.
Yeah,
it's funny. Yeah, he does. But and it's so funny. He comes on and say, "Bill, just give them something to work with. Give them some tools. Like the spiritual warfare prayer and stuff like that. And just a couple things to work with, because when this stuff happens, like I said, when it happened to me, I mean, I'll tell you this real quick, and then I'll let you go. But I just love to get your opinion on it, because I've never been anybody to be able to tell me how I'm going to say, how in the hell did this happen? I was married, my second husband, lovely when it started. He got involved in drugs. He was in construction and he fell. And we spent about a good 8-10 years trying to get him a way out of that. We tried everything, but they have to want it. That it is just any family that's ever gone through that. It's like having a demon in the house. It really is,
Yes.
because there's so much going on. And quite honestly, there was a time where I actually saw black around his leg, like they were hanging on his knees. But anyway. We would take him and we would do the baptism, and we would, his mom would say, he just has to be baptized again. And like by the third or fourth time, I told the pastor, just hold him down a little longer this time. I joke, but it was hard for the family, and you just try everything. So at this one point, he was gone for a while, came back, and I remember I went and I got the Bible. I said, look, plain and simple, you have the power to take whatever this is off of you so you can get clear-headed to go do the next thing. You're saving your own life. So I go and I get the Bible. He's sitting there, and at this one point in time, he's listening to me. It was toward the end, but he was listening. And I felt like he was really absorbing the words. And he looked up at me with these eyes, and I know you've seen this multiple times, where they're just almost begging you to help them, like they can't quite get out, and he couldn't quite speak words at the time. He was choked up. So I start reading, and I forget that I believe it was Mark, but the part where it tells you that Jesus is Lord, and you have the power in his name to expel demons and all this from yourself or somebody else. I'm trying to read it. I get about 4 words out, and I start to feel this, it wasn't like somebody had their hands. It was like something was inside squeezing my throat. A little at a time, very gradual, and I was like, and I couldn't, say anything. At that point in time, it seemed like forever. I was trying to talk, and I was fighting it because I'm going to say these words. I'm going to say the words. I'm adamant. And I'm trying. It's not coming out. My phone rang. This is before we had cell phones. I think we had beepers. The landline. The phone rings. I just reach out and I pick up the phone and I answer it. Now, we had been going to a Pentecostal church. God bless him. He's passed now, Pastor Lefebvre. If you've ever been to a Pentecostal church, let me tell you something. In the South, yes. It's an absolute fantastic experience. I mean, these people will jump it's like, wow, you just like, this is awesome. But he was adamant. He was a wonderful pastor, and he had been fighting this whole thing with the ex and everything. So he didn't even have my phone number. The phone rings, and all I hear is, tell him to say Jesus is Lord. Never spoke other word. That was the first word he said to me, and I knew who it was without him saying. I just knew. Oh. And I'm like, I'm like, hold it. I got out, say it louder. And I hold the phone to him, and he's screaming, and I can hear Pastor Lefebvre screaming to my ex, say it, say Jesus is Lord. And my husband whispers it, and he says, say it like you mean it. I can hear screaming. But as he's saying it, it's letting up. It's letting up. And and then I'm holding the phone and I'm reading the words in the Bible. We're both screaming at him, and it finally broke. Now I can understand what happened in that moment. I don't understand how it got me by the throat, how Pastor Lefebvre knew we were an issue and didn't hesitate and called without having my number. Still don't understand that. And just what a connection there was there. Have you ever heard of anything like that happening before?
I have heard of it. I only experienced it once when I was going to a case in Edmond, Oklahoma. And the daughter who was undergoing, that was my second, demonic case intervention. And when I called the mother, or did she call? No, I think I called her and her mother, Susan, and the girl in the background, Taliesin. She was she didn't know her mother was on the phone. She said, "You're talking to," she shouldn't have. She said, "You're talking to the chastiser. The chastiser's coming. Don't let the chastiser come." You know. And
Wow.
she's talking about me, but you know, that's, I think comparatively, that's a minor example from, you know, somebody experiencing a deliverance that.
It was incredible. I promise you, it was incredible. It didn't, you know, unfortunately, that wasn't enough for him. There had been many things that went along the line, but, you know, it has to be somebody who wants it to. Drugs are a very powerful thing. And I do believe that somebody that has weakened themselves that much is opening themselves up to, you know, that kind of thing, whether it was negative entities that had been human once, or, you know, just really what, I can't explain it, but I don't know how something would have that power. But I look at that story and I say, but wait, so does the good, because something tapped him on the shoulder, made him call at that time, and never even said, "This is Pastor Lefevre, you know, Sysco, make him do." No. Started right out, like everything was understood. So to me, that gave me everything I needed to know, that there's that power. That power is strong and good.
It is. The malevolent gets more press, but in the end, you want to hear about the good.
Amen.
You really want to cap it with that.
Amen. And I thank you so much, Carl, for coming on tonight to remind us of that and giving us a little history on, you know,
I'd certainly like to be on your show again, but wait till we get all the guests I could recommend. Elise Giammarco Carlson.
Let's have her on. Would you? Absolutely.
Yeah. Nathaniel Gillis, Keith Johnson, my twin brother. If you want to talk to Nephilim. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know this chat would love to hear that, because they know a lot more about that. I'm learning, you know, and I love learning. That's what we're all here for, you know, because we all certainly don't know, you know, we're all teaching and learning from each other, and I think that's wonderful with this kind of format and stuff. We know that we can contact you if you are having problems, and those Please that are listening in the future. What's the best way? All the ones that we've put here, is one better than the other to get a hold of you? Just your website, I would say. The Duo
Daemonology is a good one, and that's just Demonology spelt the modern way. Demonology.org. You can put www if you want, but it's DEMONOLGY and OGY and ology and .org. So that's the simple one. Daemonology is the AE and ends with IE.
Yeah. Looks so cool. But I'll tell you something. These guys, they do this out of pocket too, just like all the good people that we have on here. And again, just because, you know, somebody, you know, does come on and, you know, they might, you know, need a little help or something, you know, no, most of the people we have don't charge. You know, like when we were talking about the Warrens, they said, okay, it's all about the money and it's all about this. Yes, they wanted that. And again, you know, if you're in business, you want to succeed. And it certainly doesn't mean that they didn't have, something going on in the house, or they didn't have gifts. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is stating fact that Carl was there with his brother earlier, and they got pushed out, and it happened to others too. But Carl is here now, and very successful, and have been on a lot of wonderful things. And it's so great to see you here tonight, Carl. Thank you so much for coming on.
Welcome back.
And if
Maybe
you would like,
company.
Oh yes, please do, and just email me. I know James has my email too. I'll email you back and send me those names, and we'll get them on. Absolutely. Thank you again, sir.
I have an email address. It's carcosan@live.com. I don't know if anybody's jotting that down or you can remember, but
all my mods are putting them up.
CarCosan@live.com. carcosan@live.com.
There you go.
It's very Lovecraftian. And I am a second cousin to H.P. Lovecraft.
Wow. Well, see, you can't say that to this chat on the way out, Carl. Now we have to have you back.
Oh, yeah. I'll talk about that. Yeah.
We talk about Lovecraft.
He never called me.
No, he never called you? You weren't in the will either, huh?
Died in 1937 anyway. But.
There you
Yeah.
go. There you go. Well, I'll tell you what, my friend. You have a lovely, blessed evening. I love that cross around your neck. I thank you so much for helping so many people that I've never even met. But thank you for being out there for us and for the, for the people that you're going to meet in the future. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'll come back.
Yes,
Guaranteed.
please do. Absolutely. And we got a little outro here, and you have a blessed evening, sir. Thank you.
Bye, my dear.
Good night, chat. I love you all. Listen, armor of God, keep your head in the light, keep your closet door shut, and keep your feet under the covers because there are things that go bump in the night. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much. And there we go.